Welcome to Takeaways, Life Lessons Learned. I have a real estate celebrity here in front of me right now. Does that suit you?
No.
My guest today is John Tippins, officially the founder and CEO of North Cap Commercial, but you've done and continue to do a lot of things. I'm going to read your bio here, but we'll make it conversational. So every now and again, I'll ask you about what this means or to elaborate if that works.
Yeah.
So seasoned real estate developer, owner, and operator. You have extensive experience in multifamily, retail, and office projects. It says you played a pivotal role in shaping the real estate landscape of Las Vegas. I say you continue to play a pivotal role, not so much in the past tense, very much in the present tense as well, and specifically downtown.
Yeah.
So in 2018, you became the Nevada broker of record for the BLM auctions. How did that happen? What is BLM, and then what do you do as broker of record?
It sounds really fancy, but the BLM is the Bureau of Land Management. Back when you and I think, first started, if you recall, going to those BLM auctions at the county building, and you had Focus Properties that was buying a lot of it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, these guys are spending hundreds of millions of dollars. And fast forward through some relationships, the company that quarterbacks and does the auctions now is a third party to the state or to the federal government, and we're the broker of record for those guys. And so it's been it's not a lot of work. I mean, we collect everything like a broker would, but we're not really allowed to say who's bidding, and but it's neat to watch the process again firsthand. So
that's pretty cool. I actually didn't know that about you until I was preparing for this.
We just did the Cashman auction also, and so Lennar got that. But I mean, we're behind the scenes. It's just a broker of record, but people definitely call because our stuff is all over it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Over the course of your career, you've been operating partner and broker for some prominent real estate investment firms, including Starwood Capital, TPG, LaFrac Organization, the FDIC, Dune Real Estate Partners, Silverstein Properties, and Sutherland Land Company. So you're currently working with Sutherland with projects downtown. Are you active with any of these other ones right now?
No, we've active in the sense of being in touch, yes, but active.
You don't have an active project or?
No. The last thing we had, Starwood was the S and ST residential. T was TPG. That was a fractured condo deal that lasted about, from start to finish. Starwood and TPG picked me to run their West Coast for the fractured condo deals, which was Chorus Bank. Projects like Streamline Towers, which we renamed Ogden, Jewel, part of Newport Lofts, Spanish Trail, One Las Vegas, Loft 5, and then a number of projects outside of Las Vegas. And so with that project, we ended up purchasing through a partnership with Dune that you mentioned, the Vegas assets, and then rented them out till we were ready to convert them back to condos. So that deal sunset. That was about a 14-year deal, long deal. But that deal sunset. Jewel was our last building that we sold out about 6 months ago. So
let me push pause on this and let's elaborate on this whole thing. So this is right around the global Great Recession time.
Yeah, I mean,
all these projects got built as condos. They either didn't get finished, or they stalled out, or they ran out of funding. Was Starwood the lender on them, and so they took them back?
So Starwood put the syndicate together. I mean, we talk about syndicating the smaller friends and family stuff. Starwood syndicated the equity and structure to buy about 105 condo assets throughout the country, from Miami to Hawaii. All Chorus Bank deals.
So Chorus Bank was the lender. Did they go under? What happened?
They went under.
They went under. Did it go FDIC?
Yeah, FDIC was our partner, and I got a funny FDIC story when we get to that. But so
okay, so Starwood's now buying all the assets. From Chorus Bank, from FDIC.
Yeah,
and so now they own 100 some odd projects from, like you said, Florida to Hawaii.
Yeah, and at the time, the majority of the portfolio's value, not assets, but value, was in Miami. And so Vegas had the same amount or near the same amount of inventory, but there was really no value there. I mean, Streamline Tower, Jewel, I mean, there was really nothing happening in downtown. I mean, Streamline, I think, only sold about or closed about 15 or so units. I think Jewel maybe closed out of 341 units, closed about maybe 20 or so units. So I'm dealing with like an extremely fractured deal, which is why we rented them out. Also, Vegas was one of the last markets to get end user financing again. So we weren't even on Starwood's radar to get these back on the market to sell. So then fast forward, they had these assets mostly here, all here, and in Phoenix, where we put a bulk deal together to try to sell what we had been renting out through the downturn. And we ultimately, my group ended up buying the Vegas assets. Starwood then through their debt fund. Warren DeHaan, if that rings a bell, he's now running Acor Capital. But we ended up getting financed by Starwood. So Starwood stayed with us the whole time. Dune is a large private equity firm. They came in and were our equity partners and had it narrowed down between them. And at the time, Goldman Sachs was the other group. Yeah, so that was the last really deals with those guys. But in the emails or in the discussions on the way to this meeting, I mean, I'm talking to all those guys on a regular basis, and always looking for that next thing. The problem with the private equity firms is their funds are so big. I mean, if you can think about Starwood has $6 and $7 billion funds. To get through a fund, they got to find 100, 200, $300 million equity checks. And you'll notice that when like Blackstone, another big fund, has bought almost everything under the strip, right? And so if I pitch them a deal that's 100 million, they might say, okay, well, we can do 25 million for you. But that's a small check for those guys to get through their
They're
funds.
not happy about that.
They're not happy.
Which is funny to think about.
It's funny to think about. 15 years ago, I could get them excited over a $25 million check, but they're just far and few between in Vegas to find that kind of.
I was going to ask, like, how many deals in Vegas are 100 million?
I mean, we're working on one right now, and it just fits us and them as far as their check. It's difficult. I mean, you got to buy either a large industrial portfolio, you got to buy land underneath these casinos that has like a long-term cash flow for these guys. You're talking about a Howard Hughes type of play, World Market Center type of play, or a casino play, but there's not much, or a portfolio play. I can't think of really anything that would fit their appetite. I don't know if you can, but I mean, the friends and family guys have been, I would say, more flexible in their deal size because they can write a $5 to $20 million check, which fits really well. So for Vegas.
All right, let's keep going. So that was a great little interlude. So you've successfully closed 3 major land acquisitions from the city of Las Vegas for mixed-use development. What were those? That's recent, right?
That's recent, yeah. So, I mean, within the last 3 years, but call it 15 years worth of work. So the 3 deals are at Symphony Park. And to tell you how many things have come full circle in the last few years, if you remember, Symphony Park was originally tied up with the Related companies. And so you go back to 20 years ago, 2004 through 6 or so, when everybody had a condo project plan, but Related built Time Warner Center in New York, and they're monsters in the development game. Miami and New York being their biggest. Now they're in, really big in Southern California. But Marty Berger, who's been a lifer, best friend of mine, and the Fines, and how we got to know Marty. Marty was the head of the Related companies, and they had control of Symphony Park before it was called Symphony Park. And if you remember, Related was building the Icon project, never broke ground, and Los Ramblas, which never broke ground. And then they were part of World Market Center, and which was supposed to be, I think, 7 buildings. It ended up being 3 buildings. And I'm like, man, one day I really would like to when am I going to get the opportunity to get a land deal like that with the city? And it's funny now that we have the Oakland A's coming to Vegas, but, Marty, Berger, head of the Related at the time, um, the Mayor Goodman, Oscar, pre-Carolyn, the Oakland A's were actually going to go on Symphony Park. And so I get a call via Marty and just small world of that network. I get a call from, I think Brian or Danny Greenspun. I says, "Hey, can you come pick up this guy?" So I'm like, "Sure." and I pick up Reggie Jackson, right? Who Reggie, we'll get into it. Reggie was actually became really good friends, with both of Jonathan Fine and I, but really good friends with Jonathan. Is at Jonathan's wedding. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm driving Reggie Jackson around." And, but he was totally into something going on with the A's potentially coming to Vegas. But he was also into cars. So my job was not to show him baseball stuff. It was to show him potential car dealership sites. But I, of course, get back and call my dad and I'm like, "You'll never believe this. I just drove Reggie Jackson around town." But the full circle part, and back to the 3 deals with the city, it left Related. Marty at Related said, "I got to give this land back to you," which you don't hear, give the land back to the city. And this basically said it costs the same thing for me to build, on the strip as it does downtown. But on the strip, I'm going to get $1,000 a foot, and downtown, I'm going to get $300 a foot. So they gave the keys back. They, to Symphony Park. Newland Communities came in, and, they were caught in this progression of a downturn. So there wasn't much activity that they did. And then, Scott Adams was a city manager at the time. And the way I recall it is, you got this seat at the table. Can you put this deal together? Here's this parcel at Symphony Park. And I went to, and keep in mind, I was renting at the time. We hadn't converted yet, Ogden and Jewel. And so I saw this renter that most of Vegas really didn't see. I mean, if you think about even going backwards and digressing, Loft 5 was the first one we took to market to rent. And it gave people an opportunity to rent something that they had never been able to rent before.
Where is Loft 5?
Loft 5 is down, near South Point. So South Las Vegas Boulevard.
Okay.
It was a condo project. We still run it. And although we sold it, we stayed in and still run it for the owner. But at that time, I mean, you were renting an apartment and it was a 2 or 3 story walk up. There was no, interior corridor. There was, no crazy amenities. It was nothing really kind of sexy about the apartment world at that time. And I think it really helped change the expectation of the renter to be able to rent some of the shadow inventory. And so going back to Symphony Park, I knew that the renter existed because we were renting with great lease up with very little turnover at Ogden and Jewel. And when we converted those back to condos, we didn't convert any of the renters into buyers, maybe 2 or 3% of these buildings. So 275 units at Ogden and 341 units at Jewel. And Jewel was going to be our cherry on top. I told you that was the last one we sunset with. And so I pitched Kalita and Four, and I think everybody might have had independent conversations with the city, but I couldn't get any real local developers to believe in Symphony Park the way I remember it. I went to Portland, I went to Austin, Nashville, and I was confused how a lot of the same incomes existed in those towns. And it's not like wood and steel costs more in Vegas than it costs in Portland or Seattle or Austin.
So you're looking at the renter's income and their ability to rent at a certain number.
And why are we not building, in the city, downtown specifically, you can build pretty much lot line to lot line. So you talk to some guys and you're building in the suburbs and you might have setbacks that aren't required in downtown. So your land value might be at the time, let's just call it, $1 million, let's call it $50-$60 a foot, right? That was even unheard of. But really, when you look at the buildable square footage, it's almost replicated the same value. And so I was lucky enough to find Southern Land Companies out of Nashville, Tennessee. And randomly, the owner reminds me, we'll get into later the mentor stuff, but he had this Earl Mulaski sort of charisma about him. And the very first walk we did with him. Let me backtrack a little bit. So we met with the city, and I said, I've found a group, and they put a lot of stuff in front of the horse, if you know what I mean. Like, they come with like a rendering, and they have an internal team that's really doing a
City's
lot
doing
of
this, or
the
the
Southern.
Southern? Okay.
So we showed up with like a real plan, where I think historically some people would show up with the city with some pictures off of Google and say, hey, we want to build this. And it's like, how are you going to fund it? How are you going to do all this stuff? So fast forward, and when Tim Downey, the owner of Southern Land, toured, we end up we walk across the bridge from City Hall. The parking garage connects to Symphony Park, and we walk them with Myron Martin from the Smith Center. And we're just looking at Cleveland Clinic and the Lou Rouveau and Frank Gehry Design Building, an outlet mall, the county building, and just a bunch of vacant dirt and railroad tracks. And I believe there was still tent space at the time on the parking lot of World Market Center. And Tim and the tour of Symphony Park really felt like an oasis, and it really is, in the middle of Las Vegas. And the park there and what Myron's created. I was at the Smith Center yesterday for the State of the City, and it never gets old seeing how beautiful the place is. And it was almost the closer where Tim, and I've learned now what Southern Land likes and doesn't like, and as far as walkability and having amenities to walk to and things like that. So we get through with the first one, and then we are ready for number 2 and 3, and Newland at this point, by the way, when the city called and said there's an opportunity, Newland was out of the management of the remaining land at Symphony Park. And it's been, working with the city. I think the city of Las Vegas, the county is amazing too, but pretty much all of Southern Nevada. But you definitely have to put the work in. But they are some of the best, most business-friendly municipalities I've ever worked with. And we've worked with Phoenix and Reno and other markets, like all the way down to Savannah. But the city of Las Vegas and the county, they are so business friendly and get it more than any other place. I got friends that tell war stories about 10, 15-year entitlements. And I'm like, how in the world do you wait that long? How patient is your money? And, but they get it done 10, 15 years later. And, so anyway.
I'm sure we're going to open that up a little bit more, but continuing in the bio, you contributed to the development of the Metropolitan Police Headquarters over on MLK, consolidating 60 leases into one single state-of-the-art facility.
Yeah. Well, that was back when we couldn't be part of what Marty and Related was doing at Symphony Park. So I was officing, luckily, I with Mark Fine and Bill Scupa, who we all love and who passed. But it was, I called those guys so many times, and they finally took a call with me, Mark's office and Jeffrey, just to I think Bill Scupa was like, let's just take a call with this guy so he stops messing or calling us. And fast forward, and I had assembled all the land at MLK and Alta, all the way down to Desert Park, minus the Costco. But we had a deal with Costco at, kind of a verbal, like, hey, we'll move you into a master plan. And whatever they were going to end up calling Symphony Park, the 61 acres, we were going to be west. So if they were Symphony Park, we would be Symphony Park West. And so we had bought that corner from a group out of Georgia called Ambling, which still exists, mixed-use developers. And Lawrence Weekly was the city councilman at the time. If remember, Lawrence moved over to the county. Great guy. And I think that was the first time I learned how contentious or powerful certain neighborhoods was, because even though you're building, so fast forward, market crashes, no one's building at Symphony Park, Related gave up the keys, and now we got this land, at MLK and Alta down to Desert Park, which is now a Siegel Suites. We have a deal with him, we're still in. And so we don't know what to do. And Mark Fine, who we'll talk about probably, I'm sure, he was a great part of my career. And Mark was friends with one of the county commissioners, and through several different ways, it was identified that the Metro was looking to move their headquarters, and I think we were like, "This is a great idea." And so, fast forward, Kevin Buckley was on the other side of it. I think Kevin is one. I love Kevin, and I think he's amazing. The first time I met Kevin, he immediately gave me a book after we met, and just always a very nice, genuine guy.
What was the book? Do you remember?
Shoot, I do not. The 5 or 6. It's like the 5 or 6 things. Cannot remember. Anyway, I remember where I was. I was at the Sterling Club when he gave it to me, but I don't remember the book.
You're asking if I know Kevin Buckley. I know Kevin Buckley. He's one of those special people that
yes,
you just immediately feel great around him. He makes everyone feel great around him. He's super entertaining.
He's one. His license plate says Groovy, and that just whenever I see that car in front of Starbucks, he's his office, and he lives in my area too, in downtown. And but yeah, his license, he's got this Groovy license plate, and I always get excited just to see that, even if I don't get to see him. But so anyway, the deal happened, and it was really a blessing for us and for Metro and for to consolidate 61 leases. And it was the first time any of us had ever done bond financing. And we did it through a mechanism through Pima County there. And it traded like a stock. And this was at a time when, again, this is all going off of memory, but Metro had a fiscal affairs committee, and it was not just folks of Metro, but it was leaders throughout the community that were making decisions. And a lot of the pricing that we were getting were based on pricing pre-recession. And as things started to develop, ended up being a great deal, and just watching that thing trade like a stock. But essentially they were tax-free municipal bonds.
What do you mean by trade like a stock?
They were tax-free municipal bonds. So you could buy the bonds, and it had a little bit more value the way I remember by the time it closed out, but you get all your funding up front, but to pay for the development versus getting financing on like a draw type of system. So, but yeah, that was a deal that was originally going to be a mixed use development, and really just lucky, I guess, that happened. So,
was it lucky, or was it like you had this parcel and were able to execute on something? So if you guys don't have this parcel and the know-how, and I would say the relationships, Kevin Buckley was representing the police department. You guys are on the other side. You, Mark Fine, everyone's sort of familiar with each other here in Southern Nevada.
Yeah.
Where do they go and do that project if not for this parcel? Did they even have other options, or people that can figure out how to finance something like that at that time when there was no commercial financing?
Yeah, I think the answer is finding the location was yes. The bond financing was all new to us, and the only people that I think at the time that I knew of that were doing bond financing or had done it was the Mulaski guys with Irwin and Rich Worthington and Brad Shear, and I think they lended a nice hand to us to help get that.
Were they in the deal, or just kind of pointing you in the right direction?
I think more the right direction kind of thing. But again, if it wasn't from Mark's history in Vegas and the relationships and his sort of perseverance to like make something like that happen, I don't think it would have happened there. I think there was a couple other sites that I know of that were, it wouldn't have been downtown, right? And I think downtown is perfect because there's no jail at the headquarters, right? But you're close to the jail. And the other locations were, more along the Beltway, would have been disconnected from the jail, but
and also not central.
And not central, yeah. So I mean, you're right at the corner of Main and Main with the 95 and the 15. So,
and then Metro ended up buying it, and now they own the facilities.
Yeah, they had a right to purchase it, and so that was another good day.
And like you said, everybody won in that, including Metro.
Yeah.
Very cool deal. So you have a bachelor's degree in marketing from UNLV, a running rebel.
A running rebel, yes.
Did you start at UNLV or did you transfer in?
I
How did you get to Vegas? Let's go there now.
So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to college in Georgia, and loved it. Did the fraternity thing my freshman year, and while everyone else was going to Cancun or Panama City for spring break, I had convinced my sophomore year for a group of us to come to Las Vegas, and I get back and I tell my parents I actually went to UNLV during spring break just to kind of see the campus. And I saw these buildings and I was just fascinated that Atlanta's a big city too, but where I went to college was, a college town. There wasn't like, buildings being built everywhere other than university related stuff. All the apartments were for college kids, a true college town. And I had the time of my life, but I came here, and I got back and told my parents, who were both educators. My dad was a principal and my mom was a school teacher, that I was moving to Vegas. And he said, well, and I'm the oldest child. So he said, and I have his name. I'm the fourth. He's the third. John Tippins the fourth. And so I had probably that first child experience where they were more lenient and kind of the test kid, I guess. But he let me come to Vegas, and I enrolled at UNLV, and it was not at all anything what I thought. I mean, you go from a college town to where you know everybody, and come here, and there wasn't even a single college kid at my apartment complex. I lived in, fast forward, it turned out to be one of Stephen Molaski's apartment complexes called Club Pacific. A funny story is the first day I moved in, August 15th, 1999. I remember the date for a lot of reasons, but that was the first day Bank of America went nationwide, and that's how my parents paid my rent, so, which was lucky. But the first person I meet, 115 degrees outside, and I'm like, what did I get into? Is Doug Crook.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that later in life I was going to get to know Doug, but Doug helped us move in, and Doug gave us water, and I'm like, guys, this is going to be awesome. We already met this guy. I thought this is going to be really cool. And Doug moved out maybe like a week later, and I never saw the guy again. But as it turns out, Jonathan Fine, who I later become, was in Jonathan's wedding, become good best friends with the guy. And turns out Jonathan was hanging out there too. So our lives almost crossed day one, right? And then you fast forward and you meet Doug. Doug and Mark Fine did a lot of stuff and still do. I think Doug still offices with Jeffrey and Mark. And then obviously Jonathan and I became good buddies. But yeah, I went to UNLV, and I'm like, where's this college life at? Like you go to class and then you leave. There wasn't like a place to hang out in between classes other than maybe the library or the union. But it took like 6-7 weeks before I really started to know people or classmates. And then I only had class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, thinking that that's what I liked back in Georgia, was having the Fridays and Mondays off. And then I got a job at a law firm. At the time, it was called James Driggs Walsh, Kearney, Johnson and Thompson. And they're like, we'll let you, those guys.
No, it's just a long name.
Yeah, it's but Mark James, who was a county commissioner at the time, and they're still a firm. There's just a lot of different names associated with it. Now they're Spencer Fane. They have like consolidated, but still use a lot of those guys. But a lot of relationships came from there. And I started out 2 days a week, and then became this full-time runner. And going to the courthouse, meeting judges, and still learning my way. Fortunately, Vegas is an easy thing to navigate through because it's a big grid, right? You find the Stratosphere or one of the hotel properties, and you know what side of town you're on. And so I kept doing runs over to Insight. I knew I wanted to be in real estate. I thought I wanted to be in the mini storage business. That was what my neighbor and my first ever mentor did. He was the mini storage guy. And my dad, I told you, was a principal, but he flipped houses. So I knew there was something there, and that's what I wanted to do. And I was always at this Insight, Jim Zeter's office. And I kept begging him to give me a job. And finally he did. And so I ended up in Vegas, and I ended up the first 6 months really trying to figure out Vegas. And then I got lucky with the law firm. a lot of whom I'm still very good friends with and contacts with to this day. But Jennifer Lazovich, I think we all know.
Mm-hmm.
And Jennifer was maybe a year or two into the business. And now there's sometimes I talk to her 5 times a week, and sometimes, but,
She's a preeminent land use attorney.
yeah, preeminent land use attorney, amazing person.
Like literally one of
Yeah.
5 names that you would call for anything.
Yeah,
maybe even less than 5.
She's amazing. And, as a runner, I was like, who would ever use attorneys? Like, why, what is this for? And, we don't, knock on wood. We've never really been in any sort of legal stuff, but I find myself, I had an attorney 2 calls today. You're always on the phone with an agreement or, a lease or a contract or whatever it is. I mean, and so, Jennifer has helped us entitle and get probably 20, 30 projects, over the finish line. And, a lot of funny stories. That's a whole nother, but we should have Jennifer on. I mean, you get in front of these neighbors sometimes and you're about to invest how much effort in a development or build something nice around their neighborhoods. And you're very respectful of these neighbors. I mean, you have to be. But yeah, I can't imagine what she has to deal with. I mean, more recently with dealing with the temple and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I ended up with Jim Zeter. And
so before you go into Insight, I'm curious, what about Vegas caused you to convince your friends to come here for spring break instead of Panama or somewhere else?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it were like a few movies that we had seen or what, but I'm 46, so I to date me, to age me, everything then was, you'd see an ad in the paper like airfare and hotel in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and it was like $2.99 for airfare and hotel for 4 nights. I mean, it was just this crazy deal, and I forget what movie was out, or we had recently seen, but I had convinced everybody to go to Vegas, and so we ended up out here, all underage, by the way. It was, and still found ourselves having an amazing time. We stayed at the Mirage Hotel, and if you can imagine coming from any smaller area, I mean, especially when you're in a college town with like the nicest hotel might have been like some limited service Holiday Inn or something, or Days Inn or something. And you get here and you see this volcano and your eyes are so wide open the whole time. And that was just scratching the surface. I mean, it was just the most mind-blowing place. I'd been to New York at the time. I'd been to Miami. Back in Georgia, they had if you're a college kid, you could fly this one airline to New York or Miami for like $20, like it was called AirTran, which they're no longer in business, which explains the $20 ticket. But I was blown away by Vegas and the lights and the amount of density created without like this. It was just it was amazing. And I mean, you grew up here. I mean, and to see what it's done from 99 to today, no one would have ever imagined something like that. And I was just glad to be part of that in some fashion, much, much smaller part of it, but like, it was just still neat, I mean, when I first started,
you can't be that kind of humble now after you just talked about the deals you did with the city and the police headquarters and everything else. You can't say it was a small part.
Well, it was a lot of luck, but even to meet Mark, Tiffany Tiberti, you know the name Tiffany Tiberti?
No, I know the Tiberti family. Yeah, I don't know Tiffany though.
Tiffany is Tito's daughter.
Okay,
Tito Tiberti, long time Vegas family, right? Legends, and she's the one that actually had said, "Oh, you should meet Jeffrey Fine," kind of thing. But that's kind of further down the road for, I guess, the discussion. But there was just a lot of people here that you met early on, and there wasn't really people our age doing what we were doing, right? Like in terms of, the just kind of grinding and focusing on what a real estate business. And so I guess jumping into Jim a little bit, if you look at like the Insight experience, I was fortunate that he gave me this opportunity, and I thought I was like loaded. He gave me a salary, and was turned out you had to pay it back. But he taught me a lot of things that I still use today. But focusing on a product type, was a big thing, and not being the jack of all trades, but knowing who those other folks are, I guess. But he taught me how to control a real estate deal as like a buyer versus just being a broker. And so I think with Jim, I really learned how an Insight, how to syndicate things, and that was like a huge impact of how you know I navigated through the rest of where we are today. So
I'm going to come back to Jim and Insight. Let me just go to the last thing on your bio. It says that you are the board chair of the Mayor's Fund and an advisory board member for both UNLV and MidFirst Bank. So those are your extracurriculars, so to speak?
yeah.
What is the Mayor's Fund?
The Mayor's Fund is officially about a year and a half ago. I guess we're coming up on year 2. We're on like a June to June or July to July fiscal year. Became a 501c3, but it's been around for about 5 years or so. And so there was no board. It was like all advisory folks, but Tom Thomas and some other local folks are on there. And the general idea is that other cities have a mayor's fund, and the mayor's fund, when it becomes a 501c3, we can collect, donations from different institutions or from people, and kind of direct them into areas that are benefiting the community through early childhood education, innovation, education, job creation. And it's become a passion for me. I was asked to be on a lot of boards early in my career, and I thought it was very flattering, and I got on things that I didn't quite understand, and I respected, but I couldn't find my passion in it. So and it was very time consuming. And so being able to narrow down where you'd like to see your energy go, and where you can be best suited to help raise money and do things, then I found that in the Mayor's Fund. And we've done stuff with the Golden Knights. Bill Foley's group just donated 2,000 jerseys, soccer jerseys, to kids. And I had mentioned before this started that, we're doing a program with a group that's helping pay for ACT prep for kids that are trying to apply for college that may not have been able to have the means to pay for that prep, which is an advantage to a lot of other kids in town.
So does that go to schools in the city or just anywhere in the Clark County school system?
Mostly in the city. The ACT was the first one that we've done that was out of the city of Las Vegas. And it's not just for the mayor. It's actually just a title, but it can, we've worked with Brian Knutsen's office, with Olivia's office. I think we're working on a couple of other things, but the city council folks can bring us ideas, and we're working with all the different city council members as well. But I love it. I mean,
so you guys are funding a program for ACT prep for high school kids, basically.
Yeah.
Seniors that are graduating that otherwise would not have access or resources for this kind of resource.
Right. And it's not cheap. I mean, like what others are being able to pay for their kids. I mean, I think the first results started to come in last week, and we're seeing like a 6 to 8 point increase in ACT scores for these, seniors that had gone through this program. And I'd like to see it continue. I hope it does. And, Intermountain Health has been a huge, part of the growth of the Mayor's Fund with capital contributions. And, like I said, the Golden Knights, Sally Dobler, who you probably know, she's been around and she's so amazing. I mean, I think Sally, she's our CEO, and she's done an amazing job. She's like, there's probably like 10 of her out there. I see her at so many events. And then when I'm like, I can't even go to all those things, but like, I see her social media post and it's like, you were at like 10 things today. How did you pull this off? And then she'll top it off with like a Golden Knights game. And then this morning or yesterday, whenever she posted, she was like the Oakland A's. So she's been a great champion I couldn't have picked a better suitor for that to grow this mayor's fund. But yeah, it's awesome. And you can see the impact of what it's doing for the community. So
That's pretty cool. So that's your bio. So now I get to say officially welcome to Takeaways.
oh boy.
You told me how you got into Vegas. We're going to talk more about real estate and whatnot. So I ask everyone this question. I want to ask you this question. What's been the single most influential thing or event in your life that has shaped you the most?
Pre-business and then carried into business, my mom still writes handwritten cards. I got a stack of Hallmark cards on my desk, and she also includes a Starbucks gift card. She still lives in Georgia, and so I found that what I had organically kind of learned growing up with her, is I still write handwritten cards, and I still, so I think first and foremost, like just how I was raised, I think helped me, be polite and respectful of other people, and so I give her that credit. But then, I think it's the relationships that you build throughout your career and the mentors that you get, and so sorry. Go back to the impact.
Single most influential thing or event in your life that has shaped you the most.
Yeah, I think it was getting to work with Mark Fine. And at the time, I had been at Jim's off at Insight and had a great experience there, and I was still really young. But Mark, there was a transition. I mean, I of relationships, I would say, and like Mark, son Jeffrey, and then Jonathan, and having that group of friends and network, and like getting to really and the amount of respect Mark has for other people, and just to kind of try your hardest to be similar to him, and to treat people. But I think working with Mark and those relationships, at the time we officed with the Agassi Foundation. I got to meet Julie Murray. Do you know Julie?
Mm.
Julie runs now Moonridge Group, which is they help nonprofits. Anyway, Julie was amazing. But I met so many people officing with Mark, and got exposed to a lot of deals that were bigger, that were, I would say, more impactful to the community. And we've talked about Metro, but it opened a lot of doors for me. And I think that relationship with the Fines that translated into other relationships was like just very lucky. I mean, keep in mind, I'm only 4 years or 3 years in Vegas at the time, and you're meeting that guy. I was pretty lucky. So
yeah. Let's go back to your mom for a second. So she writes thank you, or not just thank you cards, but cards to people.
Yeah.
Regularly.
Yeah. I talk to her every day, every morning, but I think her and Hallmark have like like some kind of deal. I don't even know some of the days that she sends me. Like, I'm not her boss, but she sent me a card for National Bosses Day with a Starbucks gift card, right? And
because you're her son, but you're somebody else's boss.
Yeah.
So she wanted to make sure that you got a card on National Bosses Day.
Yeah. So
what did she write in the card?
Just thinking of you. Like, she writes a lot of time, and hope you have a good day, and almost like we're on a phone call kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, look, when I started in the business and everyone's flying people around in helicopters, looking at land deals, I would take people up, and this gets back to my mom. I would take people up to the top of Stratosphere, and I would buy 10 for $1, the Vegas postcards. that was my stationery.
Mhm.
And I would send, you a postcard with the Vegas Strip, which was much older then. And hey, thanks for coming out. But that was my stationaries. I couldn't afford to have like this nice custom stuff, but all that comes from my mom and my family upbringing, my nana and things like that.
Do you know why did your mom start writing thank you cards?
Oh, you know, I think just from, you know, her mom or my nana or um, I don't know. I think from just my growing up, I feel like the South, people, um, tend to have, I mean, they call it Southern hospitality, right?
Mhm.
I felt like even moving out here, I felt like people in the South just kind of had a different, not necessarily better or worse, but like a different hospitality style of politeness. And I mean, I've told people before, you would meet someone at a grocery store. I'd be in line with my parents and you see like some kind of food on in line, and you'd end up having dinner at their house. Like that was like, oh, how are you going to make that? How are you going to do this? And it was just like a more casual conversation. Here, I'm like, how am I going to get out of this grocery store? Like kind of thing. Um, and don't even really go to the grocery store, but like it's just I don't know, just something she does. And, you know, but she loves every second of it, I think. So, yeah.
That's cool. So let's get more deep into your professional arc. I know we've kind of bounced around a bit, different things that you've done at different times, but I've got a list here, and maybe you can give me a description of it, or if we already talked about it, elaborate more, or a fond story or a takeaway that you've had from there. So you mentioned you started university at Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
What's a takeaway from there? A fond story?
uh, so my next door neighbor growing up and my classmate, Melody Weinstein, her dad started Mellow Mushroom, which isn't here, but there's about maybe 300 or 400 now throughout the country. I know that there's like 5 or 6 in Phoenix, maybe 4. So I grew up next to her, and his name was Mark Weinstein. They still own the company. And when I went to college, uh, my whole family's from this part of town. So like there was a lake there called Tippins Lake. There was a bank there called Tippins Bank. Um, the Tippins Farmers. It was like my whole family was from there, and so they had a Mellow Mushroom, and so it was in this little. I told you earlier it was a college town, so there was like a laundromat next to Mellow Mushroom, and I got the job at Mellow Mushroom. I always loved to work. I was working since I was, as soon as my parents would let me cut grass or babysit, I was cutting grass, babysitting, umpiring baseball, stringing tennis rackets, anything you could do. So there's this laundromat next to Mellow Mushroom, and I'd scratched a couple nickels together, and I bought a laundromat. And my takeaway was do due diligence. And so the laundromat, about every machine broke literally like in the first month, and my due diligence wasn't done because I didn't test. I just thought I was buying this laundromat that was working, kind of thing, and was able to get out of that. But what I learned there was I needed to be in a town where I could just do more, and I mentioned Mellow Mushroom because I got the job there, which I wanted to get a job there, as if I were a senior, even though I was only a freshman, because I knew the family,
Mhm.
right? And so I had the greatest little job there. I mean, people would, I was making pizzas, I was making calzones, I was bussing tables. You could serve drinks there I don't know if it was legal or not, but I was serving drinks there as a bartender under 21. And, but at the end, when you go bust a table, someone would leave like almost a full pizza or half pizza, and I would just box up the leftover pizzas and take it back to my dorm or my apartment or fraternity house at the time. And but yeah, so the takeaway
Did you
was
resell them to the kids in the?
no, I resold a lot of stuff, but I didn't resell the pizza. Although they did start taking it for granted. They when you didn't come home with pizza that night, they were like, bro, what's happening?
It's an entitlement now.
Yeah. So,
So do your due diligence
do your due diligence.
and to be in a place where it's really what I'm hearing. It's like a place that meets your ambition.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, having seen what Atlanta had to offer as far as like, just the hustle and the bustle and the big city and growing city. I mean, college didn't have that. And when I came here, like I said earlier, for spring break, and I was like, wow, this is next level for something to do here. So, but yeah, Georgia Southern was a great experience. In fact, when you tailgated there, right? Like it was a big thing. I mean, and I got to UNLV, and you go to a football game, and you're like, looking at is today game day? Like, it wasn't like much. Now it's much different, right? That they're drawing much bigger crowds. But
I laughed because I grew up in Las Vegas. I went to UNLV, and so my college football experience is you go to Sam Boyd, and there were tailgates there, but it's not like you're on campus. You know this. You're not on campus tailgating. It's if you go to the game. You're driving halfway across town, and you're tailgating out in a field. And if you make it into the game after tailgating, I mean, there are a lot of ifs. So my first job out of college, I traveled for my fraternity. I was the traveling consultant, the guy that came and helped organize Rush when it was Rush. And when it wasn't Rush, I'd go and we'd call it wave the flag. So I'd go to schools and just give people attaboys. And then at the end of each semester, I'd go visit the chapters that didn't pay their dues, and I try to get some dues collected. But my first, like you had the eye-open experience with Mirage Volcano. The first sporting eye-open I had was at Michigan State.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I went there to sort of reorganize the chapter, and the few guys that were left were all living in a house with a few other people. So it's like what you would expect a fraternity house to look like. 3 stories, different rooms, people had different rooms based on how much they were paying and whatnot. I slept on the couch in like the middle room where if you walk through the front door, I'm the first person you see.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. But it was game day.
Yeah.
Like Big Ten college game day. Kids are up at 6 a.m. UNLV, it's like no one gets up at 6 a.m. for anything.
Yeah.
You're coming home.
Got home.
You're coming home. They're all up at 6 a.m., excited, enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I got the Hillel director, Cindy Huey, well-to-do woman, ran the Hillel there, did the capital raised a few $1 million to build the Hillel building. She had tickets on the 50-yard line. She let me use her tickets that game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, oh, where do I go? So I'm walking with the kids, and you're like walking from where the house was to where the stadium was. I mean, it was a march, but like the whole town is activated. Everyone's wearing the school colors, paint on the faces, food vendors outside, nuts. Then you get like within proximity, still not close, but some proximity, and you start hearing the band and the drums and it was like surreal.
Yeah.
So I had like an opposite experience. So now you're
quick, just to touch on that. So, become really, over the years, good friends with Derek Stevens, who's from Michigan, and opened Circa Hotel and started with the D, which was Fitzgerald, and Golden Gate was the first one. But I took Missy Brayman. We've been there 12 years now. Also went to UNLV, born and raised here. I took her to her first Georgia game, and I was wearing a Circa hat. And this is only like 5 or 6 years ago. And I put the Circa hat on the hedges in Athens, Georgia, and sent it to Derek. And he says, I'm going to take you to a real game, similar to your experience. And I thought I was at a real game. So Derek took me to the Michigan-Ohio State game at Michigan.
Yeah.
And it said 112,000 people. But like what you said about Michigan, I mean, like,
it's insane.
The sandwich place that he has at Circa actually is at the Michigan campus, the same group of people. And it's just this, you get this sandwich that's bigger than your desk, and then you end up at the tailgate spot. And, but yeah, UNLV's getting there. It made me excited last season to see that excitement. And I've run into a few people, both in my neighborhood and today, coincidentally, a few times I accidentally ran into people, are the same person, and big UNLV fans. And we're both so excited about both the basketball program with that coach. I mean, you're wondering when that energy is going to wear off, and then the new football coach carrying on a program that has clearly made a statement in the NCAA, and here we have a chance in the Mountain West to make the college championship tournament, right? As a top 10 team or whatever they are, 10, 8. So yeah,
Exciting.
it's exciting. So maybe we'll tailgate together this season.
Do you tailgate for UNLV games?
Yes and no. I mean, like,
Are there tailgates?
Yeah,
I just go. So Jared has tickets. And
yeah,
we just go into the suite, the hospitality suite.
yeah. I feel like I've done both. I definitely walked through the tailgate once when we were playing Boise State, which was I think their last Mountain West game or whatever. But yeah, look, how lucky are we? We have Allegiant Stadium.
It's great,
right?
yeah.
So
it's very Vegas. So give me a fond memory or a takeaway from UNLV as a student.
Let's see. I don't. Well, memory. Okay. I failed entrepreneurship. I don't want to say the professor's name, which I found, and I had put a real deal together, an in real time deal. By the way, I was still in college at UNLV when I'd already started in commercial real estate, and I failed this class, and I did a real deal. It was your capstone class. If you remember, what was your major?
Marketing.
Yeah. So me too. So you had to take this capstone, which basically was like a marketing, a finance, econ, all the different business majors. And everyone was so gung ho to do this project. And it was a real live project called Decatur 46 acres at Decatur and 215. And the conclusion of the project was it didn't work, right? Turns out it didn't work. But everyone else had done these business plans, and it was like that they were going to make $1 gazillion off of something. So anyway, so that was a learning experience for me.
You did a real deal in the conclusion that the deal doesn't work.
That's the whole reason you do a business plan.
Or to see if it works or doesn't
see if it
work.
works.
Right. And everyone else is making like made up stuff. And of course it's going to work.
So $30 million worth of ice cream they're going to sell. Remember that little that little coffee cup thing on Flamingo near UNLV? I think it's still there.
Yeah.
That's changed hands probably many, many times. And some group was going to make millions of dollars out of that place. And I'm just sitting there like I said, I've been working since I was a kid. Anyway, I was the definition of entrepreneur. And so I appealed it and ended up kind of moving forward. But that was a learning lesson. And, my dad used to tell me the only thing my other brothers and sisters were pretty much straight A students, Pepperdine, Georgia Tech, like way smarter than I ever could have been. And my dad was more like, I just need you to pass. So I really loved the business classes. I love the marketing classes. I love Jack Zabrowski, who I still talk to at UNLV. I love the econ classes, the finance classes. Those got me going. But, so just pass was his thing. And his other lesson was learn how to keep your mouth shut. And so that failing entrepreneurship, you had to really kind of bite your tongue. I didn't know how to bite my tongue when I was 20 or 21 years old sometimes. But anyway, yeah. So that was one of my takeaways from UNLV. I made a few friends that I still stay in touch with, but I got so involved in work relatively quickly at UNLV that I didn't really experience much, I would say, like college life, like you did or Missy did. And Jason Goodman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Goody and like all those guys. I mean, they had a whole network. And by the way, my fraternity, who I thought I was going to be, again, I thought I was meeting Doug Crook the first day I got to Vegas. And then I thought I was going to be moving into this fraternity network called Kappa Sig, which was the fraternity I was in. And they had got kicked off campus in that summer. And so I was left with nothing, essentially. And so the work thing just became part of my sort of Vegas beginning. And I don't regret it. I loved it. But I'm glad I got the 2 years out of Georgia Southern, to get to college, sort of experience and talk about it. So
you talked about the runnership at the law firm that then led you to Insight. So what was Insight? Who is Jim?
Yeah.
What you mentioned a couple things you learned there, like focusing on a product type, controlling a deal as a principal versus a broker.
Yeah. Um, so Jim, also a UNLV alumni, um, had a big impact on kind of trajectory, right? And at the time, Jim's program was to bring in people that would specialize in a certain market where he wanted to become very knowledgeable about. So he had a retail guy or an industrial guy, Zoltan Holo, who's still active. Do you know Zoli?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Danny Mulcahy. That we had a good little class of people that started. um, the gentleman that we just met. I mean, I met Garrett Toft and Kevin Higgins um, through Jim back in the day, and Jim found out that I liked mini storage and apartments, and so he said, "I want you to be on South Strip." And I was hungrier than ever. I saw everybody had a nice car. They had, you know, something that was like, I'm like, wow, you got to really work hard to get those things. And so I just started farming that market of South Strip from Mandalay Bay all the way down to about a mile past St. Rose, a mile east and west of the Strip. And there was no M Resort, South Point. I mean, that was what I did is I farmed those markets, and I knew, this much harder then than it is now to get contacts. And a lot of things are corporate now, but like back then you were dealing with a lot of mom and pops. And so that was a lot of fun. And I had to
So what
learn.
was like that? You're saying this term farming, which you're
Yeah.
basically pulling every property record from the geography you just talked about. So from Mandalay Bay to
Yeah.
around St. Rose and a mile east and west. So every APN, it's land is what you're
Yeah.
farming.
Yeah. I mean, there
If
was,
there were built structures there, did you call on them too or no?
if they were between Las Vegas Boulevard and there were some people, I mean, I remember walking up on a trailer. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
If there was a guy or a family or whoever that had like a trailer that was on 5 acres between Las Vegas Boulevard and the 15, I wanted that guy's land. And the nice part about Jim is while he was my broker, he was also a buyer and he was a syndicator. So like I was able to go and say, hey, yeah, hi, my boss would like to buy this property kind of thing. Now it's annoying when you get those phone calls like
Mm-hmm.
from people that, especially having the same name as my dad. I get calls from all his properties down in Georgia, but yeah, I farmed the heck out of it. And it was more than just farming. And I try to tell this to when people come into my office and I tell them how to do it, right? I have like 4 or 5 things that I tell people, you do these things, it's going to work. But, you got to know what they paid for it. Never count an owner's money. I learned that early on. You can never go to a guy. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I know you paid 500,000. You're going to make 20%. Like I've been told, don't ever count my money. So I never did that. But, yeah, a lot of people, land values back then were 200 to 350, 400,000 an acre. Right. And, this was all pre high rise conversation, really you had, some apartment guys, but at the time, apartment guys were only 18 to 24 units to the acre. And the farming to me, what I tell the new people coming to the office are just people like Espin. Is it Espin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. Um, uh, it was also knowing the zoning and, what does H1 mean? What does H2 mean? What does C1 mean? C2? What are the uses in those? Who are my buyers? Who are my audience? I sat through every single, Jim made me do all this stuff, but like I sat through every timeshare presentation. And I'm like still in college. I'm like, I can't buy one of these things, but it was like a mousetrap to get out of this thing. And I mean, and at some point I'm just like, okay, guys, I'm just here researching. I got to go. Like,
Why did he make
and
you sit through those?
I took it like anything, like when you want to become an expert or try to be an expert in a product type, you got to know everything about it. And I had no, girlfriend at the time. I had no kids. I had no family. I mean, I had nothing to think about how to make,
Mm-hmm.
this work down here and to know everything about it. And, I slowly started getting listings and the listings went from, you know, uh, 50, maybe $1 million to like $5 million. And got lucky with a couple of buyers who bought a bunch of stuff. And, but yeah, that was my insight stuff. And, um, with Jim Zeter, because he funds you the first year, but then his program at the time, I don't know what he does today, but if he still does it even, um, but he becomes kind of your partner in that market. So it was a great investment for Jim to invest in someone, that was going to find the stuff that we found. So that's how I ended up kind of moving downtown, by the way, but we'd get to that, I guess.
Okay.
So
Mark Fine. Was he after Insight or was there something in between?
Yeah. Mark was really
So let me say it like this. So when you and I first met, I think it was somewhere around 2006.
Yeah.
And I believe your business card said Mark L. Fine and Associates.
I remember
the company you were working at.
Tell me if you agree or disagree.
Okay.
I feel like we met at Rob Wilner's house in his backyard at a Halloween party.
What year would that have been?
Boy, I feel like it was 2004 or 5. But I feel like you were with Ophir Ventura.
Mm-hmm. So Ophir and I grew up together.
Yeah.
We probably did meet initially.
Do you know Rob?
I know Rob Blumer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I graduated in I traveled from 03 to 04. And I came back. I worked with my dad for a period he had a stucco subcontracting company and was doing some development in southern Utah. So I got to ride shotgun through that. And that's more or less how I learned commercial side of things and some development. We likely met. But then when I came to the decision that I wanted to do real estate full time and not dabble. At the time, everyone had their license and everyone was kind of just trying to catch a referral off. I wanted to actually do it. And I wanted to get out of the family business. And Ophir had set me up with you at your office. And we probably spent 2 hours, 3 hours. One thing I remember from that is the inordinate amount of time you took with me in that afternoon.
Yeah.
Usually you meet with someone, it's like an hour and you're out of here. But it was a 2-3 hour kind of a meeting.
Yeah. I like to talk.
You like to talk, but I took it as you were very gracious. I was looking for my next move and you were really just sharing with me, totally open. Like, here's the world of opportunity and possibility. And you didn't have to. You could have said, okay, I did my friend a favor, Ophir. I met with you for an hour. Get out of here. But you didn't do that. So you remember a Halloween party with Rob Wilner at his house. Probably. 2004, I was here and I was, Yeah.
And I remember, Ophir, who, good for him. Look what he's like created a great little life for himself and his family. But, I remember like yesterday when Ophir, I thought he was joking. He was like, cause I knew his dad first, his dad was, if we called Sam right now, he would answer the phone. A lot of these mentors, they answer the phone and say, Johnny, hey, brother, where are we at? Sam's just one of the greatest guys ever. I've been fortunate. You meet guys like that. And Sam, I'll digress for a second. I met Sam because when I was still with Jim, I tied up three apartment complexes at the same time. And I was like 21, 22 years old. Remember I told you Jim could at least write an earnest money deposit and all this stuff. And my first mentor said never make an offer with zeros on it. I think I told you this before, but so the offer was...
What does that mean?
Never make an offer for like 10 million or 11 million. Like it should be 9,987,000.
Okay.
That was his thing. Cliff Chanel.
Is that the old guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he was the mini storage guy, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so I make an offer to the owner is Steve Leifer and Michael Feiner. And Michael Feiner's kids, to tell you how small the world is, are still friends and knew the Fines, Mark Fine and those guys. I didn't know those guys at the time either, but so I tied this thing up because I made Jeff Hawks. There's a company called Apartment Realty Advisors, and Tony DeLita, who was Jim's CFO at the time. Do you know Tony or know the name? So Tony's now with the Desage family, and great guy also. So Tony and I go on our first business trip to Denver, Colorado. and I didn't even have a suit. I go to Robinson May. I don't even know if it's still a store. They got like a 3-suit special that for like $199. And I dress up. I think I'm looking like $1,000,000. I don't know that it's baggier than ever, and the back of my pants are below my shoes and all this other stuff. But I think, I mean, I remember my buddies that I all worked with. I was so proud to have a pair of like Dockers. Like it was like, still would be, but like it was a big deal. And we flew to Denver, and I couldn't believe it. These guys were, I was so in awe. These guys were leaving to take their private plane. The Michael Feiner, no, the Steve Leifer guy owned a piece or larger piece, some piece of the Boston Celtics at the time. And I'm just like, wow, this is the real deal. And they give us the deal. I'll fast forward to all that. Tony and I go and we have a dinner. I'd never even been to Denver except for the airport. And we have a nice dinner. We're celebrating. I got this thing tied up. A month later, Jim says, I'm not going to close on this thing. And this is when before Mark Fine, this is when I like really met, this is when the hustle happened. And so I still had all the South Strip stuff. I started downtown. But I knew the apartment stuff was, so he goes, I'm not going to close it, but you got like 30 days to go try to flip this thing. This is before the condo conversion market and all that kind of stuff. So I had wrote down and done this whole pretty package and all this stuff. And I show up to Sam Ventura's office. Ophir was probably still in college. I mean, are you all
Probably,
around? Yeah. And all of these guys that I ended up meeting that I'll tell you about, they would turn my package over that I was so proud of, and they would script write down this this where I learned back of the napkin. And Sam's like, now he calls me Johnny, but he's like, this is what I can pay. And I'm like, you got to look at the package I put together. And I meet with another guy, Haskell Iney, Haskell, I'm sure. I meet with Haskell, and Haskell does the same thing. I'm like, Jesus. So, I learned a lot from those guys from that transaction, but it didn't close. In hindsight, we would have all made $1 gazillion because they all went up and the condo conversion market happened afterwards. But that was back when you got like, fairly new Class A apartments in like the mid 60s to mid 70,000 a unit range. Right. But yeah, that was, so that's how I met Sam and his family. And then when I met Ophir at this party, I'd already knew Sam, and you were there, I believe. And he couldn't believe he was meeting me. And I was like, come on, dude. I'm looking around like, this is a joke, right? Like,
he couldn't believe it because you're like a celebrity.
No. But that's how he made me feel.
Yeah.
But I don't like feeling that way. And I don't like that attention. I thought he was joking 100%.
But he wasn't.
And he wasn't. But it was, and I still don't like, I would never ever pretend to be that, but I didn't like
I'm using that word kind of tongue in cheek in a way, but to sort of describe it more, meeting John Tippins is a big deal. Why? And what does it come down to? It comes down to like you at that time, in a very quick amount of time, like you got in, you focused, and you got things done. You were able to tie up 3 apartments next to each other. That's not an insignificant thing. Experienced brokers today would have a hard time doing that.
It was easier. It was a lot easier.
And so people have a very high regard for you from your work ethic, your honesty, your politeness, your respect, and all that. And you're able to get things done, so to speak. So for Ophir, like, I remember, like, it was a big deal. Like, John Tippins. Yeah. I know you don't like the attention, but like,
he's long past
you have a
me.
good
Like,
reputation. Yeah. And if you say that about Ophir, like, hey, look at this guy Ophir.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the attention either.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. But so you met Ophir and he was excited to meet you.
Yeah. So I mean, I think he was dating Cece at the time, and maybe just finished law school around that time or
sounds about right.
Yeah. And I obviously got to know Galit and Alon, and I mean the whole family, really. I mean, but yeah, they Sam Ventura, he's got that mini stores that you probably know about. He still has it, I believe. I mean, when you talk about mentors, I mean, like his mini stores was Abco because he wanted to be first in the. You know this story?
Yeah.
It was AAABC,
Yeah.
BCO, because he wanted to be the first mini storage. I mean, talk about the
In
takeaways.
the
I
in the
hadn't thought
yellow
about
in the yellow pages.
in
So
the
you open
yellow
up the yellow
pages.
pages, it's alphabetical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so like,
Isn't that
you talk
brilliant?
about this so brilliant. It's like, so he was the first guy. I mean, I fall for it on Google, right? I'm looking for something on Google. It's like, you call that first thing. But yeah, Sam was, to this day, uh, Sam has just been like he's never changed. All these nice guys, they've remained like really nice guys, And, so yeah, Sam was a good one. So
So insight you learned, focus and controlling deals, and you had a partner in your back pocket, so to speak, or a buyer in your back pocket.
yeah,
And then you went to Mark L. Fine and Associates, or you guys created that together? Is that?
no, it was, when I told you at the beginning, I mean, I was kind of annoying to those guys, but at the time I was ready for a change. I mean, like the splits and the deal with Jim wasn't really what I was, I, I was consider myself like humble, but at the same time, you knew what you were kind of worth. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like I, I did get lucky with my farming and getting some contacts relatively quickly, but Jim did introduce me to this guy, Pepe Charles, which was
Mm-hmm.
kind of pre-Mark, but Pepe was a business coach and, and, really kind of help you set goals and manage your goals. And, probably Pepe's equally up there with one of the most influential people of my career. His how you value your time and achieve your goals and learn how to delegate, like all these things. I mean, I would recommend him to anybody. And
So you
because
still
of,
active as a coach?
yeah, and he invested. So like, he wasn't just like, there were some business coaches that I've met along the way that I never worked with, but I met that had never actually been in business. Like Pepe was a real business guy and retired, and he put money in deals. And so, I didn't feel like he had any, how that happened, if you have like a second on it. But
Mm-hmm.
Jim's wife had passed away, and Jim was trying to create more time for his family, as well as, same amount of time as the business. And, we go around, fast forward, we go around the room. You have to say how much you're going to do the next year, how you're going to get there, and all that kind of stuff. And I set a number that, you know, everyone was saying like 15 million or 20 million in transactions for the year. And I set a number that was pretty outlandish to everybody else except for Pepe and Jim. And I said exactly how I was going to get there. And
What was your number?
it was like 120 million. I ended up doing 180. And in large part, some land stuff, but I landed, I started getting some larger listings, and the market, I mentioned South Strip, was going from that low land basis up to, approaching $1 million an acre at the time, 900 an acre, 800 an acre. And I had gotten a couple buyers down there that were buying stuff. Yeah, I got really lucky. And then after that meeting, Pepe pulled me to the side and said, "I'd like to work with you." And, it was around the same time I was looking at something else and ended up at Mark's office. So I continued to work with Pepe, and thanks to him, I mean, I hired my employees. Do you remember hiring your first employee, looking at like, this is going to cost me how much? And then you learn how much your time's worth, and you're like, this person just,
So walk us through that. So a young entrepreneur, you're about to hire your first employee, and you're looking at it from the perspective of how much this is going to cost me.
yeah. So
Oh.
Pepe, he knew what I was doing in commissions. I mean, like it was, um, and I had a really hard time with delegation. He has a camp in Newport. His program is called MAP, Management Action Plan. And it was about closing the communication and, learning how to delegate. Like everybody's program, everybody, after you go to the program, your strengths, maybe you're overly organized or underorganized or whatever it is. But, people fill out this survey that you're working closely with, and you get to this camp, and then you come back and he caters this thing to you. And mine, I had to spend 2 years on delegation, but Pepe basically said, the short version is, how much time do you spend making these packages? And then he backed me into, how many hours are you working a week? And he's like, well, each one of these packages is costing you like $3,000 or $4,000. And I was like, no, I do them. He goes, yeah, but your time is worth that. And so I hired do you know the name Brittany Morris?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Vegas, went to USC. She coincidentally was a runner at the law firm in between going to Gorman and going to USC. And when she graduated, um, I had already, so I landed Bigelow. That was all during this transition. Robert Bigelow was, the Budget Suites of America, still is, but Budget Suites of America guy. Now Bigelow Aerospace also. And I would tell Brittany, I'm like, I'm doing these deals that are like, $30 million and 45 million, 90 million. And she's like, no way. I couldn't even tell my friends back home. They thought I was, a residential real estate agent that was selling houses. And it didn't make any sense to anybody, but these were real numbers. These were like big numbers. And so I had like a semester left at UNLV. I'd started working with Pepe, the business coach. I was at Mark's office at the time. I had started there, and it was just me, Mark, Sarah Lynn, who's now up in Seattle or Portland, but Sarah was like a salesperson also, and Bill Scupa. And Bill was handling a lot of Mark's small, retail centers like at Town Square and 215 or Town Center and 215. And Bill's awesome. And Pepe came in and I ended up hiring Brittany to kind of run our multifamily brokerage / marketing. And we're still good friends to this day. We talk probably once.
She was with you for years, wasn't she?
Yeah. I mean, she was with me through the way ups of, buy to, oh shit, we just market crashed. What do we do? And again, back to sticking to what I mean, staying in not really shifting gears, staying between the two bumpers. Like, okay, we're going to stay in this lane, but we're going to bounce around to get through this turbulence of a market. And Brittany, I said, look, we're not buying apartments right now, but we're taking over this Allure building. Not as the owner. We tried to buy the Allure building. It was like half sold out. And this goes back to Marty Berger. Marty, it's like left related. The condo market was dead. And Marty and I and Jeffrey Fine ended up purchasing 6 multifamily projects together. At this point, Mark and Jeffrey and I had moved from Howard Hughes Parkway down to the district down at Green Valley Ranch, and which Jeffrey's other side of the family owned at the time, the Greenspunt. And so, back to raising money, Marty's who taught me the difference in your friends and family and your, larger investors, the $500,000 guys. And Marty's the one that taught me the private equity world, which, I mean, a lot of people know about it now, but like still a lot of people in Vegas don't really know about the private equity world. I mean, it's like the first time I went with Marty when he came to town, he was commuting from New York and had committed to us this whole business plan of we're going to go out and buy multifamily projects. And, Brittany had the benefit of being our broker on these multifamily deals. We bought 6 of them together, and we had this great idea. And so the first meeting we go to, Marty gets to town and taking to Las Vegas Country Club, and he's like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, we're going to pitch this. I got like 5 meetings at lunch to pitch this. He goes, "No, he goes, we're going to take this business plan and go to, and do a little road show, and we're going to have one investor." And I'm like, really? Like, that's how it works.
So you're setting up, I'm going to pitch, 5 Sam Ventura types.
Yes.
I'm going to raise equity from each one of them to get everything I need.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah. We're going to keep in mind, Marty got put on the map because he raised the money, did the debt and equity, did the whole deal for Time Warner Center, which to this day is one of the, most historic real estate developments in the country. Right. And so Marty is a legend in putting debt and equity together. But so we get a group, Square Mile Capital, which still exists, and we still stay in touch with those guys, Jeff Citron. And we had this business plan we followed. And then the market completely crashed, right? And this was back when banks were given, almost 100% financing. It was just hard to tie up a deal at the time. This is way before I tied up those 3 pre-condo conversion. Excuse me. So we still had equity, but then we ended up, we were trying to buy, we saw these fractured condos, which I talked about at the beginning, but Allure was Fifield Residential was the developer, big Chicago developer, and Ulico, which was like this pension fund of some sort. They were out of Chicago. Also, they were the debt, and at the time, they said we can't sell it because we don't know if we're allowed to sell it. But whatever you were going to do for us, or for whatever you were going to do, can you do it for us?
Mm-hmm.
And so, the market was at the all-time worst at the time. And I told Brittany, I was like, it looks like you're going to be converting from an apartment broker into like on-site sales and leasing. And so we took over the sales of the building. And at the time, Marty and I, you remember the times earlier in your career when it was like, who could pay the check first, like at a dinner?
Yeah.
And even now I find that people are trying to pay the check, but, this was a time when it was like, all right, first of all, we're not eating on the strip. Our go-to was Tokyo, the sushi place in Commercial Center. And you're splitting that check. However many people are at the table, everybody's putting up their credit card. And, but Marty and I kept that Wednesday, the day he would leave on the red eye back to New York Wednesday to be with his family. And so, he called me on like a weekend. He's like, hey, this next Wednesday, I just want to meet with you. And I'm sitting there for like what happened? Like we're breaking up kind of thing. And he's like, no, everything's fine. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I have the worst guilty conscience. I can't, never look over your shoulder kind of thing. Like which makes me sleep well. But this bothered me. I was like, man, for 3 days, I got to wait till this. And we go to Tokyo, the sushi place. And he says, I wanted to tell you in person, but I've been offered this job to be the CEO of Silverstein Properties in New York. So Silverstein, built World Trade Center sites. They own, that came down in 9/11, but they built all of, basically the high-rise office in New York. And again, we were at the rock bottom of Vegas. There was no Chorus deal at the time. And
now you're losing your sort of your partner, your running buddy, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
but good for him because he's
good for him.
Yeah.
But and I was like, do I go to New York or do I stay here? And I went and met with every one of my mentors, and in their own way, they kind of said the same thing, like, this will pass. And look what you've kind of started yourself with here and created. And obviously I stayed, and I, spent the next 3 or 4 years trying to figure out how to get out of a downturn of a market. And that's how we ended up with the condos. We were the only group.
Were you yourself financially hit?
Yeah. I mean, I got to guarantee all these. Now, number one, I never didn't pay back a loan, which wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like when you got big partners, the banks probably didn't even look at me as hard as they're like, oh, we got these other guys' signatures and the market's never going to crash. And so, I was on a lot of land deals, and land had like zero, interest from anybody to purchase. And so, fortunately, fast forward, I mean, I paid back, I never defaulted on any loans, and, I have a lot of good banking relationships as a result of that, versus there were days where I'm like, like, why am I going to keep doing this? Like,
mm-hmm.
and, but yeah, it was tough. I mean, like I said earlier, I didn't have children. I had like too many cars that sold some cars, and I had this condo project that we didn't own that we got a fee for. And then, the apartment complexes were all non-recourse loans. We lost all the apartment complexes. The first complex I bought, I bought with Sam Ventura. That was Town Terrace, which we're trying to buy back again. We sold it to Tony Hsieh. In downtown Las Vegas. But yeah, there was nothing. And you had to walk in that office every day. And at the time, I only maybe had like 7 people in the office, 8 people, employees, like paid employees. How do I keep a smile on my face
mm-hmm.
when I know, you didn't want to check the mail from like a bank letter. You didn't want to even I'm like, gosh, what email is this coming in? Like, it was just a really, really bad time. And I lost a few friends to it that we probably all know. And, but everybody kind of put their tail between their legs at the same time and just got through it. and again, I stayed between the lanes. I felt like getting into the condo realm of my between the lanes was staying in downtown. It was staying on South Strip. And in hindsight, it probably wasn't an accident that those things fell in my lap. I never left my lane. And and so when Starwood called, you remember where you are in a lot of places, like when you get that phone call or when this happened. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember exactly where I was at the corner of this area of this property when I got the call from Starwood, and I was just like, oh my God, like this is like we're gonna get this deal. This is the FDIC deal. And it looked a lot sexier on the outside than it did on the inside. I mean, as far as like, but I had a business that I was doing. What I mean by that is like I was busy again doing something that I was in my product type. It was in
Mm-hmm.
my lane, and you know, and stayed in Vegas, obviously, and um, but yeah, that was a tough time for a lot of people. I mean, um, for everybody. I mean, if people, Marty and I, when we would go meet with people, and um, some of the best relationships came out of that market, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the people that you couldn't get a meeting with or you couldn't get a phone call with. I mean, when I said everybody had their tail between their legs, the bigger the owner, the bigger the problems, right? And so everybody had their tail between their legs. And one of the greatest people I met through that downturn, do you know John Goodry?
Mm-hmm.
So John was the head of City National at the time before Bank of Nevada. And I mean, again, this is all full circle stuff. Like going back to San Ventura and all these people, everybody had a line of credit for some amount. And I had with Bank of America, they had this private client banking lady, Patty Pearl was her name. And Sam and I talked, and he's like, have you lost your line of credit? And I'm like, no, I hadn't lost my line of credit yet. Wasn't but like a month later, I lost
Mm-hmm.
everyone was losing their line of credit.
Right.
And so, um, so we went to City National also had a presence in New York. And so we went to City National, and I think they must have just moved into their office here at or up on, near downtown Summerlin, near Red Rock. And John Goodry says to us, guys, we don't have any lines of credit. He goes, all we have right now is customer service, and it's free. And I'm like, I'm telling you today, I must have told 1,000 people about that. And I became friends with John Goodry and grew a mad respect for the guy and his politeness and just how he treated people. And then, later with Bank of Nevada, John's daughter actually interned for us. Have you had an intern before?
Mm-hmm.
I've had maybe 15 interns, and I've only had like 2 good ones, right? Some through UNLV, some through friends, but
Mm-hmm.
John Goodry's daughter and David Steinberg's daughter, Ari Steinberg,
Mm-hmm.
were the 2 greatest interns. Like they actually gave a care of what they were trying to do. But anyway, John went to Bank of Nevada, and he had a passion for education, which is where I was, and so we hit it off on those respects. But yeah, getting through that market was tough, and the relationships that came out of it were great, and staying in Vegas was a great decision, I think. So anyway,
That was an awesome tangent.
yeah, that happens.
No, that was good. You're like, there's so much that, like I was in the neighborhood of it. You just really covered in all of that. Kind of going back to those high times. It's funny you mentioned like, when you go to lunch or dinner, it's like, I can't get the check fast enough
Yeah.
to pay or someone else. I remember, so I got my real estate license. I hung it for a while just with a friend's mom's brokerage. And then I did a quick stint in residential, really as like the next step out of the family business before I ended up with Jared Katz at the Remax that Galit and Alone had. And so we're at Claim Jumper over at Green Valley Parkway in 215.
Uh-huh.
And we're like having the real estate team lunch. And the other real estate team that was there, everyone sees, they paid for our tab. So they got their first, they ate their lunch. When they paid theirs, they were like, picked up ours, and when our bill was supposed to come, like, no, the other team already got it.
Yeah.
It was like that back then. Do I remember this right? Did you once receive a Porsche from a client as a gift after a deal?
uh, Not directly, but yeah, I did a deal. I mean, back to buying dinners. I mean, someone bought a Porsche, gave me a used Porsche of theirs. But yeah, it was, it was, I love cars and that's kind of my thing, I guess, cars and watches. But, yeah, that was, I was so embarrassed to drive it because I was like, I had all these, it wasn't, it just looked too flashy. So I would never drive it to work. And,
Do you still have it?
no, I've had a bunch of other ones since then, but, the Porsche was like my dream car as a kid. You know, my dad would take me, every Tuesday. This is, if you met Missy, which you've met, but if you ask Missy what I do after work, I literally, I could tell you the price of almost every single car to this day within reason. I mean, a newer car, whatever they're worth. I can tell you what financing is for cars. I know more about cars than almost anything except what I do for a living. And in another life, I probably am going to be a car dealer. But Auto Trader came out every Tuesday, and I would go and I could circle the car, and I knew. And so that was the thing. And so when I was a kid, and I told you even when I started working with Jim, and you saw so and so pull up in a car, it's like, okay, I want to work till I can get that, kind of thing. So, but yeah, that happened. But that was when that was a little more than buying lunch. There was one year where it was that I was given some watches. I'm just like, geez, everyone's got so much money. I mean, it was crazy for going into the recession.
You mentioned like helicopter tours.
Yeah.
Like literally people would look at property. You'd go down here on the South Strip, whatever, Maverick, get in a helicopter. And that's how they were, not everybody, but that's how some people were doing. It was a common thing.
Yeah.
And you would take people to the top of the stratosphere?
Walk around the stratosphere.
And what you're pointing out?
My Landiscore map, and you could point out everything in downtown. You could nail South Strip. Yeah, that was my helicopter tour. And I think they liked it just as much as, so a lot of people are scared. I was scared of helicopter to begin with, but like, but yeah, that was my helicopter tour.
And then you buttoned it up with a postcard.
And I buttoned it up with a 10 for $1 Vegas postcard. And that's, when you go to people's office a couple years after that, and you would see that postcards on their desk. I mean, that was like the coolest little thing. Like they kept the postcard like from the meeting. So anyway,
did you dress in disguise and visit one of your properties? I think you sat as a security guard. Is that?
Yeah.
Am I remembering that right?
Yep. Desert Park Apartments, which I had mentioned earlier, is 368 units. It was part of this assemblage, but it was like a covered land play at the time. And we still have it with Steve Siegel. Steve operates it now as a Siegel Suites. But as soon as I remember driving up to the property, there was a little 2-bedroom above the leasing office. And the name, I'm missing the name, but I can picture the guy. He had like one of those H2 Hummers, Indian guy. And he couldn't have given us the keys. It's almost like his wheels screeched when he left the parking lot. And so this is the apartments next to Costco on MLK. So MLK and 95, just on the north side of the Metro headquarters. And I was like trying to figure out why I didn't know anything really about this massive building and a lot of turnover. There was no washer and dryer in the units. And when I say turnover, like a lot of skips, a lot of non-renewals and all that kind of stuff. And so, but there was a guard gate. Back in the day, it was that apartment complex and the one next door. The one next door had a tennis court. They were some of the nicest apartments in Vegas long before we had it. And so, yeah, we had a security little box that you used to have to show your ID or show your card on your sticker on the car or whatever. And I went and dressed as a security guard, and I figured out what the problem was at the property, but it was not for the benefit of my safety. Without getting into those details, but I've seen how that property was really running, and there was some really bad things that we had to fix, and so, but yeah, so we, let's put it this way. We had a racquetball court there. We had a giant, I think it was roughly 20 acres or so of the property. And at this point we'd become friends with Metro. And we were letting the fire department and Metro use our racquetball court. And then we put a sign up that we're going to let the police department do their drug dog testing. Just the way I remember it, we had to put signs up. And the day after we put those signs up, about 3 buildings just vacated. So 368 units, we probably lost between like 40 and 50 units overnight, just skipped, gone. And that was like a drug house in the back. And
so they're renting from you to operate a drug house, essentially.
There was a massive amount of, I mean, when I was the security guard,
it's a good central location. They can run up and down the strip pretty easily from there. That makes sense.
I didn't know what I was getting into, but it was the same cars would come through, and it was like, come on, like I'm not dumb, like you know what's going on there. So anyway, what a creative
happened. Solution you found. So first of all, that you would dress up as a security guard and sit there.
Yeah.
Was it like one time? Was it over a few nights? What was the?
It was 3 or 4 nights, but yeah,
like a full 8-hour shift.
No, this is in the evening. It was dumb of me, but hopefully everyone was going to know the names of the people that they were going to see.
Mm.
But no one did. They were going to see the guy in the back. Like it was never they couldn't tell me any of the names. And so, but yeah, so after something happened, then I ended up not doing that anymore. But we figured out what the problem was, I guess. So.
And tell me later what happened. I'm curious.
Yeah.
So when we were sitting in your office that day I was talking about, you mentioned one of your mentors. I'm guessing it's Cliff Chanel. And he had a saying, you called him right then and there, just like you talked about Sam. If we called Sam right now, they would answer. It was like, You're like, if I call him right now, he'll answer. In fact, let's call him. And you called him. And I think it was Cliff. I don't know. But the takeaway from him is you take an ugly one and make it a pretty one, or something to that effect. Does that sound right?
Yeah, he had all kind of quotes. Mm-hmm. I heard Mark Fine say something at the CCIM thing the other day, and when he said it, it kind of reminded me of the stuff I learned from Cliff, right? And I don't think Cliff would even know that I took a lot of these things from him, but Mark said at the were you at the CCIM?
I wasn't able to go.
Yeah, so
I saw him and Steve Jones.
Yeah, it was a great one. But he talked about when he was taking over Summerlin, getting involved with that, and that the way I remember it was Summerlin was the first one with an SID, and Mark made a comment like he didn't know. It was like the first one in Nevada, maybe with an SID, Special Improvement District, I think it is. And he turned something so bad into something so good. Like he learned how to sell it. And the way I'd heard this story before about the SID and Mark, but like ultimately people were bragging about this. Mm-hmm. I'm paying an SID.
So like you buy a house in Southern Nevada.
Yeah.
In no place else other than Summerlin do you have this SID, this SID. Yeah. And so if you're looking to buy a house, one of the qualifying questions is what's the balance on the SID? So I guess I don't know who funded the improvement infrastructure.
Yeah.
But this was a way to get that initial investment paid back, and every home had a SID.
Right.
And so now if you're buying in Summerlin, there's this thing, but in nowhere else does this exist. So it's like a bad thing. It's like, You don't buy there. There's this extra fee. And so Mark gets in there and he turns it around to a thing. It's like a status symbol.
Yeah.
Like of course I have a SID on my house because I live in Summerlin.
It's going to have parks.
You don't have a SID because you live in a trashy neighborhood.
Yeah. There's amazing. Like, so with Cliff, he was a similar guy, like, if you look at, uh, the littlest of things, right? Like, um, by the way, during all this stuff, downturns, upturns, we've never had like this crazy marketing budget. So we like when whether it's the course
It's
bank stuff,
10 for a dollar postcards.
yes, the same thing. Good, um, good example. But you know, when we were trying to sell condos at Allure, I mean, I was, buy a condo or tie a condo up, get a free night at the Went. And I didn't tell Wynn that I was doing that. It was like I'd get a room for he had $99 special. So it cost us $99. We did buy the penthouse, get a Bentley, and we sold both penthouses. And you couldn't buy if you couldn't sell a condo, you definitely weren't selling Bentleys at the time, but the Tobins were gracious enough to put 2 Bentleys in front of the building. So, but Cliff taught me how to point those things out. Mark clearly excelled at it, and it worked. I mean, like, you go into Loft 5 right now, the apartments that were built as condos, and it's not rocket science because everybody does this now, I think, but it says, GE appliances and gas burning stove and, just the stuff that makes people kind of, because we're definitely not spending money on some of these buildings to make it look like this new product, so we're trying to sell the best we can what we got. And Cliff was good at that. He sometimes would say, you can put, and I think when we called him, he said, can only put so much lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig, is what he would always, like, what he would also always say. But, he also, well, yeah, he was a good mentor, but he was the mini storage guy for sure. So
you mentioned many mentors. You've mentioned Sam Ventura quite a few times. What's a takeaway or two that you got from Sam?
Every mentor that I've had that I, shared a very similar quality. And, Sam being one of the first and longest ones, but first of all, everyone was really, really nice. And like, they gave you the time of day. I mean, I used to stop at Sam's office, like, on my way home from work, just to hang out for like a half hour or whatever he'd give me, and so, but yeah, Sam, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. Almost like not having your family out here. I mean, Sam felt like that family member, and, especially with his kids, and, all of them are in the business. I mean, it says enough about Sam that every one of his kids wants to work with Sam, right? Like, a lot of people want to get out of the house, but they,
I never thought of that. Like, I grew up in that house practically.
Yeah.
And I never, until you just said that, never thought about what that says about Sam.
Yeah. I mean, say it about Mark Fine. If you look at the mentors, like, almost all of them have that same quality, but, yeah, Sam was great. And so humble, like, yeah. So Sam was still is like a great one. Sam's brother-in-law married Mark's sister. Such a small world.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like your dad, though, also. You've said a few things that you've learned from him.
Yeah, my dad's talk to him all the time. I think the philanthropy side of my upbringing, or what I do now, comes from him. I mean, like, when you're a young kid, and I was the oldest, I mentioned, and we didn't go without, but we weren't rich. It's like we had we had more than most, but not as much as a lot. But he gave so much back to, we had 2 adopted family members, like he gave more to, I think, people sometimes than we felt like he was giving to, like, if we wanted something new, it's like, well, why did you just give this? And so becoming humbled on giving at an early age was an accident, but lucky, and so when I, realized after the fact. I was telling someone the other day, yesterday, we were talking about ski towns. You ever go skiing or
Mm-hmm.
snowboarding? I mean, it's like outrageous how much, if you buy for a family on the ski mountain, a burger and fries and a Gatorade and a Snickers, and you got a family of 4, you might be spending 150, $200 just on so,
Mm-hmm.
my dad, we had to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he went to Costco or Sam's Club and bought a thing of Snickers, and I was like almost embarrassed to open up my thing. But then when you're as an adult, you're like, that guy's a genius. It's like,
That's funny.
but yeah, when we were kids, and having siblings, like you go to the restaurant, and like it's Mexican restaurant we go to all the time called El Azteca. And, we had to negotiate with one another. It's like, you can get cheese dip or you can get a Coca-Cola. But we couldn't get both. Right. And so we almost always ended up with cheese dip. But, yeah, that was him. I mean, I noticed that. So a lot of these mentors have similar qualities that they're not excessive in the sense of like just blowing stuff. I mean, and they're giving in a way that
Mm-hmm.
they don't ask for the accolades of that. Like you just wouldn't know it. But my dad definitely took that to another level. And I appreciate that. I mean, I learned that at a young age, and when you get more mature in your career and you realize, like, man, our parents did a lot, like, to give us what
Yeah.
you know.
So you've been part of downtown for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Big influence down there. Describe it now compared to when you first started working down there. What are some of the differences?
Well, where I grew up in Atlanta was near Emory University. Like, would kind of through high school and stuff, and you're kind of watching this area grow and not really understanding it as much. But when I came downtown, there was similar uses that you had on South Strip. Not so much on the timeshare side, but you could talk to apartment guys, condo guys. There was a lot of you had the same high density, residential, or basically the high density product types that you could work with down there. No one was going to build a casino until Derek, but no one was going to build, the Wynn in downtown Las Vegas at that
Mhm.
time. But the arts district maybe had back then, this goes back to like 2004 or 5, 2000-ish. Casa Don Juan was still there. It's still there today. There was no Tony Shea there, it was pioneering. And I'd mentioned earlier the Agassi stuff, but like I'll tell you what it was like then, because Mark Fine, Earl Mulaski, a lot of my mentors were like, what are you doing in downtown? Erwin would ask me, like, he would never say this in front of investors when Erwin would be in my kind of closer meetings. And after he'd be like, what are you smoking crack down there? And I'm like, no, it's like, so, you're no longer pioneering in downtown. To some people, brokers and real estate guys, until they see downtown riding in the car with me.
Mhm.
I mean, like, I don't know if you took anything away from that, but like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Let's describe that for a second. So, a friend of ours bought a parcel downtown. We said, "Hey, can we come pick your brain?" We met at a little coffee shop. We all get our coffee expecting we're about to sit down and open the brochures and talk. We get our coffee. You said, "Hey guys, let's all get in the car. I'd rather just show you around while we talk."
yeah,
And so, how long do we spend together, do you think?
hour and a half.
About that?
Yeah.
And you drove us around from where we were over like by the federal courthouse on 6th Street, going up north, I would say just south of the 95, looped around all the way south of Main Street and kind of back up.
Yeah.
Here's what I took away, just kind of thinking about it out loud now. There's so many categories of what's happening downtown. It's not just, you can't just say downtown now. It's like there's downtown Symphony Park area and apartments and like really high end stuff.
Mhm.
Not what I would think if you say downtown apartments. I'm thinking rundown stuff. I'm thinking the only thing I really could think about that's new is things that Sam Cherry might have built, and he's not building huge things. But then you get into what you showed us over by Symphony Park, and this is a real downtown over
Mhm.
there, like what you would think about. I didn't realize just how developed. Let me back up. My impression of downtown, like I mentioned on the apartments, small apartments, nothing I would ever want to live in.
Mhm.
That myth was sort of busted. Um, I knew about there's a foodie scene, there's a kind of a bar scene. What was busted for me is like it's in the next phase of development. It's not just that first wave of the things that were happening around the arts district and whatnot. It's now the next wave of it. You took us to this one bar, unassuming building,
Straight pirate.
the Pirate. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you said, "Oh, we're gonna walk in here." So you pull over the side of the road. It's a ton of construction. It's a one-way street. You pull over just enough so the other cars can go. And we walk in. It's like a white brick building, I think. Is that
Yeah.
what the exterior is? You open this door, and I'm transported now. If you've ever been to downtown Disney, the Disneyland Hotel has a tiki bar,
Yeah.
like by the pool.
Uh-huh.
It's like I feel like I'm sitting in there.
Yeah.
I was totally blown away that this kind of place is even there. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then there are a few under construction that were about to open. Like the guy, we're in the parking lot. The guy's in the hard hat and the vest, and we're like walking into the area that was already done because they were nice enough to kind of let us peek in there.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what I took away for what it's worth.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not stopping. I've said it for years and I'll continue to say it. We will go vertical. We are going vertical, right? I think that the demand in downtown Las Vegas, specifically between Stratosphere to Fremont Street, Medical District, Symphony Park to your parcel, 6th Street, 7th Street, it will not stop. We did a tour 5 or 6 last week, maybe, but we did a tour. There's 5 new bars and restaurants that are under construction, about to open within the next 2 weeks, or actually one opens tomorrow. I mentioned earlier to the Doberman. That's this guy's 7th or 8th location in downtown. He owns like Park on Fremont and Commonwealth and places like that. But there's all these places about to open. The residential's coming. So currently at Symphony Park, and this is the major difference. And I told you, I go back to my first apartment complex with Sam Ventura, his family, Seth Shore. Do you know Seth?
Mm-hmm.
So Seth had just moved back to Vegas, and Bruce Steifik, who passed a while back, but Bruce was another mentor and investor. And we bought this 50 units, and everything back then was like just pioneering. Like you wanted something to be something so bad. But at the time there was Zappos hadn't all of the energy that Sam and myself and guys like Michael Cornthwaite, Ann Kellogg, maybe a handful of us. Oscar Goodman did a walk with us, the first ever mayor's walk. And, this is, Mark Fine ran for mayor, right?
I didn't know that. No,
he against Oscar.
I did not. I don't remember that. No.
And, when I started with Mark, it was after he had run for mayor, but like, I didn't know Mark when he ran for mayor or whatever, but his office was for his campaign was at MLK and Alta on the east side, which has now been taken through eminent domain from the widening and all that stuff.
Mm.
But that was his campaign office right there. And when I started assembling all this land and doing deals for Bigelow and all that stuff in downtown, even Mark was skeptical, like, this is like way pioneering. And, but now I go back to even when I talked about Symphony Park, none of the local developers wanted to be there. Now I know a handful that are poking around downtown, because if someone's doing something downtown, your ears to the ground, and it gets back to you pretty quickly. Like, oh, so-and-so's looking.
Mm-hmm.
But Cedar Street out of Chicago, Southern Land, and Cedar Street's actively looking again. we have a lot on our plate with Southern Land that in the tune of like almost 1,000 units that, while we're looking at other sites right now, and I'm more bullish than anyone and will remain bullish, you still got to make sure you're leasing up those buildings. I mean, hopefully I'm not drinking my own lemonade there. I haven't yet, but like, I think those buildings are going to be the fastest leasing buildings in the history of Vegas by like a landslide. To me, this is lease up of the Ogden, which was the fastest ever. And we did 70 leases in 1 month at the Ogden, which is Fremont and Las Vegas Boulevard. But I'm not saying we're going to do 70, but I think because of the amount of units, I mean, we're going to put 1,500 people in downtown in the next 18 months that are going to be living.
It seems like a different type of renter based on the product type. Is that, accurate or no? Like a higher grade of renter, if that's...
I think the tower is going to deliver an expectation of someone that's never existed in Vegas. I think the tower, 23 stories. I mean, it's the level of finishes now compete with any of the condo product that was ever built in town. And I lived at Mandarin Oriental which is now Waldorf Astoria, which I think was one of the nicer buildings in Las Vegas, and at least my style or my taste. But I think this building is going to deliver on that. And I think, with the amount of a diverse sort of job pool now, that it's not just gaming, entertainment, medical school, medical district, the Golden Knights, the
A's,
the Raiders. I mean, there's a lot of other professional jobs in town. I mean, so
I think you don't just mean the players. You're talking about also.
Oh yeah, I heard numbers of like
the corporate jobs that come with those.
Yeah. And a lot of the players from what we've researched in other cities don't want to sign or don't want to buy a house because they might get traded in a year or two, right? If you look at the lifespan of some of these players, it might only be 2 or 3 years in a city.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm bullish on it, and I remain bullish. I mean, when we rented Ogden and Jewel, we were anywhere from 30 to 50 cents higher than a Class A apartment in Summerlin. Granted, 2010, we also weren't given any concessions, but we were also the only ones delivering that inventory to the market. And it was in an area. I was nervous about the Ogden because there was no grocery store. There still isn't. Delivery wasn't really as big of a thing at the time, but there wasn't Instacart and Uber Eats and all that stuff. But I believe that the Arts District, 337 units, the 311 units in the Arts District also that Cedar Street's doing, and Symphony Park are going to just crush it. I mean, where else can you live in Las Vegas except for a condo on the Strip and maybe a few units now? We track them, so I can tell you there's a few decent places at downtown Summerlin, which is a beautiful area. There's the Lifetime Living at Green Valley Ranch, which is where I would live today. I mean, like it would be an option if it existed when I was renting an apartment or a house or whatever, to be able to walk from, places to coffee shop to basically our whole entire drive. When you and I drove through downtown, Missy and I walked from Scotch 80s to downtown, and I drove, one of the local home builders, not to really think too hard, but one of the larger, more custom local home builders, through all of downtown. And I really love for them to figure out, where if they could get a couple quarter blocks and had enough where that we could create 20 to 30 of this sort of, what do they call them? Skinny talls, or like, 3 stories, kind of what you see in Newport or Huntington Beach. And I got him into Jonas Park, and he's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "This is Scottsdale all over again. How far is Main Street?" It's like less than a mile. He's like, "Oh, every one of these houses is going to double." And he's been right. I mean, like the Jonas Park, you can't get in less now. Jonas Park, you know where that is.
I actually don't know where that is.
So
I was going to ask you.
Basically between Las Vegas Boulevard and Maryland as a bigger picture. And, single story homes. It's probably the most influential downtown neighborhood. You've got a lot of old school people there, that old school meaning like original downtown supporters, so you look at the pockets of the east side of Las Vegas Boulevard, you have John S. Park is Beverly Glen, basically Sahara, Maryland, Las Vegas Boulevard, and Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
And they're awesome. And I got a bunch of Kelly at my office is in there. David Figler's, a whole bunch of people are in there. But yeah, the walkability thing is a real deal. I don't even like taking my car down to Huntington Beach. Like I can Uber from the airport, and I'm on foot or bicycle the whole entire
Mm-hmm.
time I'm there. I know exactly what I'm going to do when I get down there. I'm going to walk to this coffee shop at 6 a.m. on Friday or whatever. And downtown's like that.
Just without the beach.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, you're right. We don't have that. Like growing up in Vegas, there is no walkable anything here.
Yeah.
You drive wherever you go, get out of your car, you go in there. I mean, there's no walkability anything.
Nothing. And look, I was against, I just didn't comprehend to me the public transportation stuff. If you go to Arizona or to Phoenix and you go to Portland and you spend like a couple days there, you can have a lot of fun there and just kind of like do some other research. But Portland and Phoenix were able to connect, basically the width of Las Vegas, but they were able to connect an area via transit. And now it's a thing. Now you take the bus or the rail or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State connected like 15 miles basically, and people built housing around those stops. And we're not there yet, but the RTC's got this higher speed transit, not rail, along Maryland that will come from like generally the UNLV area down Maryland and then cut up through downtown into the medical district. And that's a real deal. That's
Mm-hmm.
like, I think mostly funded.
That makes sense.
And now will people use that, right? But if you go to Portland and Phoenix and other cities, but if you go to Portland, which is where I was really told to go check it out, they connected the entire Pearl District. And have you been to Portland?
No.
It's
Nope.
I'd say go in the summer. Anything you get out of summer is perfect. But like, the Pearl District was basically, imagine everything on industrial from like downtown behind the strip, where you just got like the old krill printing stuff and just really heavy industrial. Imagine that. And you say we have no ocean, but we got the strip. So the strip to me is our ocean. And like the view of the strip is as valuable to me as a view of the ocean. And if you could walk to the strip, and I lived at the Mandarin, I could walk from everywhere at City Center. I would even take the train from City Center to Bellagio to feel like I took a train, like as stupid or silly as that was. But yeah, the walkability is something really special. So, by the way, that to digress, I had a small little piece, my first little piece I bought on South Las Vegas Boulevard, 3.83 acres. And it had just closed, but I had signs up everywhere at the time. And Steve Wynn had just bought Desert Inn. And Michael Gahn had just bought Cactus in Las Vegas Boulevard. And this reporter did a story and clearly didn't know that I had confused me with other people apparently. But I was in an article, which I have in my office, but with Steve Wynn and Michael Gahn. And the story was large landowners are buying land on the strip. And it was funny that mine was this little 3.83 acre piece against the 15. But I was quoted and it said, Las Vegas Boulevard is our ocean and everyone wants a piece of oceanfront property. And that, that was in the paper. And that was kind of a funny, flattering article to be mentioned with those guys.
That's awesome. You were also friends with Tony Hsieh.
Yeah.
So how do you think about him?
Nothing but great things. I mean, look, I never once tried to do business with Tony. I think what Sam Cherry and myself, Michael Cornthwaite, a lot of the downtown people had started to work on Tony saw that vision because they were officing in Green Valley. Um, and, Tony was, a visionary. I mean, like in every aspect of it. I give Tony the momentum Tony created on Fremont East. So you can literally go from Las Vegas Boulevard down past right around Maryland Parkway, right? And for a normal group of people to clean that up would have been, so he purchased almost everything. I don't know if you've looked
Hmm.
over the portfolio and all that kind of stuff. But he didn't just tear stuff down. He shuttered it. He painted the outside. He put like the wood on the windows, but painted the windows. Everything was done tastefully. But he cleaned up an area that could have taken easily 15 or 20 years to clean up. So, the effort that he put into, you know, the three C's as he referred to it, but the community, connectivity, and community, connectivity, and connectedness.
Collision, I think, was one of the
Collision,
C's.
collisions
Maybe
is
it's
something.
connect.
Yeah. Collisions. But yeah, Tony was amazing. There's a reason that guys with his type of personality, the Musk and Tonys of the world, do what they do. I mean, they take it to another level. And I give Tony, um, credit for the growth of almost all of downtown, because Tony was only one person. He could only do one real estate development deal or apartment complex. There was only one guy, right? And so if you and I had a, steakhouse we wanted to open on Fremont East, and he was already working with a restaurant, we had to go somewhere else. So then where we end up? We end up in the Arts District, right? And so the Arts District had multiple owners. And so Tony didn't really buy anything over there, but he did put people over there because they couldn't do anything on Fremont East. And so,
Hmm.
um, inadvertently, I think he took Fremont East to another level by accident, right? And so you look at the people that couldn't do business on Fremont East that wanted to, who have now opened two or three places in the Arts District, who could have easily opened two or three places on Fremont East. And so super tragic. I think we talked about earlier. You remember where you were and things happened. And, I remember where I was, and I remember, I was on a group text with all the Airstream. He lived in an Airstream down on Fremont East in Maryland. And there were multiple group texts. Some was for game night, some was for Friday night. So it just kind of, but yeah, I mean, it was, he, he had a love of the Golden Knights. He never really liked hockey. And so we called it the Taylor Swift bus. He had this big, imagine some rock star bus, right? And you'd get on and he'd give you a shot of Fernet. And there was Fernet. That was his thing. He wanted you to do. You'd start a meeting at 12 and he'd want you to, and you'd have to pretend. But Tony was really cool and special, and like, just, it was a hard sort of nut to crack. But once he saw that you weren't out there to get him, right? Like, I feel from my perspective, because I was new to him too. He was new to downtown and he wanted to be part of downtown, and we had been down there forever. There was some weirdness, not with him so much. There was some weirdness with like some of the culture that he brought that was just kind of like, all right, we're throwing all this massive amount of, delivering happiness. And it was good, and more good than not. Right. But there were some weird things, like, you'd meet someone and they're like, well, what makes you happy? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like kind of annoying. So, but Tony wasn't that way.
That's funny.
But yeah, super sad. It'll be interesting to see how the estate kind of ends up just,
Yeah.
selling stuff off. And I'm glad to see it selling, because that's the only thing that's going to help recreate Fremont East, because Fremont East needs some new blood and needs some new ownership. And I think that I wish we're selling two of their properties right now. My offices, not me personally, two apartment complexes. And, so there's activity happening and there's buyers even in this market. But they need some new development. Cause Tony was walking his whole group from Maryland all the way to the Zappos headquarters. So yeah, I wish that we could speed that process up. So
It'll take its course, but there's no question he was a big influence. You want to do some rapid fire takeaways?
I'd love to. This has been fun.
What's your favorite real estate deal you ever did?
Oh man, uh, it's probably um, getting to the deal. So my my last, I was still in college at UNLV. I sold the Mount Charleston Hotel to Haskellini, and Robert Bigelow owned it. And Bigelow, I had still not met, and it was like two sort of very, very good, very business-minded personalities that were very strong personalities, and it was their way or the highway. So he's like, this deal's never going to close, and I'm only dealing at the time with the assistant. That deal closed, and I told Janice and Donna, who are still with Mr. Bigelow today, that, well, Mr. Bigelow said he would go to, I didn't know who he was, by the way, at the beginning. By the end of the transaction, I'd learned pretty quickly. And he was supposed to promise me to go to lunch, and he still offices at the same place on Eastern, across from near Sam's old office. You know what I'm talking about, the big old office there. And Janice calls me and says, Mr. Bigelow can go to lunch tomorrow. I was like, oh, sweet. So I mentioned I had started focusing on downtown. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I got finals tomorrow. And so I studied the Bigelow test. I studied every property he had in downtown Las Vegas. I now own a couple of them randomly, fast forward through multiple transactions. And I sold all those, but the best deal I ever made was not necessarily real estate. It was studying for the Bigelow test. And that gave me, after we had lunch, I think I had, he committed to 18 million worth of listings as a college kid selling these properties. And he said this, he said, if you ever take a listing you can't sell, I'll never do business with you ever again. And I always held that pretty closely to this day, of never over promising. And we sold every one of them. And then that turned into budget suites on Paradise, 3 more budget suites on Boulder Highway, Shelter Island, a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, like almost $700 million from that in transactions with Bigelow from that one lunch and meanwhile, I got to reschedule my final exams. So
almost have been worth to fail and just take the class next semester.
Oh yeah.
To not miss
or
that
drop
lunch.
out.
Or drop out.
No.
Do you have a least favorite real estate deal?
You know, my other mentors, I mean, so getting it, the best deal you've ever, the getting into the best deal you think is the best deal. If it's with a bad person, you're effed, right? Yeah. And what I mean by that is it could be the greatest deal you've ever done in your life. And I've gotten into this where it was all the best practices from every condo. I mean, keep in mind, like I repositioned these condo buildings over the years. I mean, from that were dead in the water, and for other people sometimes. Gramercy on the west side was Manhattan West. I mean, like we fixed a lot of stuff on our own behalf and for others. But I get into one that is literally like the best deal I ever made in my life, and so good that everyone started counting the money on the other side. But they made the deal. I mean, it was and we were it was just me too. It was like, I had one silent partner from, that wasn't a private equity deal, but he worked at a private equity firm. And, this is only we just got out of this a couple of years ago. And I still own some stuff there, but, we were about to hit a target on that deal, and we'd have owned this thing forever. And the other side decided that they didn't want us to be their partner anymore, not because of performance at all. And they fast forward. So I did a deal with a bad group and a bad person. And so the best deal ended up being the worst deal. And it was the only time I've ever been in a like a litigation or whatever. I mean, it never went to
Mm,
court or anything like that, but there, I'm very adverse to like any sort of legal confrontation. I don't want, I just, it's not my, but it's a year and a half of your life where every email costs money. And it didn't matter what have you ever been in a situation where you're battling with something and you're right the whole time? It's not like I didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you did everything right. And to the point where we were celebrating with that group on this turnaround. And, and yeah, then they were like, whoa, 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 this should be our money. Um, and so it was the stress of the legal side of it, you know,
mhm,
and you just never know. We prevailed and like, but it wasn't worth it. It wasn't, I would have gone back in time and I would have never done that deal. I'd have bought something for Missy and I and just been happy where it was down in Savannah, Georgia. And, I mean, that was the other part of the best part of the deal was it was back home. I could fly to Atlanta, see the family, go down there. It was a beautiful place, still is. Um, but yeah, if you do a bad deal, the opposite side of that with a great person,
mhm.
you're just fine. So, and I have those too.
If you were a new real estate professional in Las Vegas today, where would you focus? Or what would you focus on?
I, I, I like how I started personally. Eh, Um, uh, I would find you're not going to know day one what it is. You know, if you ever feel like you're working in our business, then it's not in my opinion, it's not for you. Like I can't wait to wake up in the morning. I'm so excited to get up and, like, even on a Saturday and Sunday, I mean, I'm up really early. Like
Mhm.
I just, um, but the day that this starts feeling like a job, then you should start looking for something else. I don't know if you share that same thing, but, um, and that doesn't mean it's always fun and easy because it's not. But um, as soon as someone finds if they want to be in real estate, it could be industrial, it could be retail. I got two retail folks that came from working in department stores, right? And they are great retail
Mhm.
brokers, right? And I got some that want to be, Kelly Ortiz Thompson. Do you know Kelly?
Mhm.
She came to me to get advice and she was working at a great firm and still friends with those guys. And, um, the, but she wanted to be in downtown. She kept coming back. She's like, what if we work together? And it's like, she's a great example. If someone was getting in business, find what it is that you truly can. You can't, if you don't want to sell industrial, then don't sell industrial. But you got to put in the work that I mentioned earlier. You got to farm. You got to be the expert. You got to sit through the timeshare presentations. Um, and when I tell people when they come, Aspen's a good example. I mean, um, pretty quickly. I got a new guy coming on right now. I can already tell he's going to crush it. And I can usually tell pretty quickly if someone's going to be that go getter or not. So and by the way, real estate is not for everybody. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean,
100%.
you have to learn how to
Yeah,
handle rejection.
that's one part of it. The things you're talking about, farming, it's a simple word, but the process of farming, it's a freaking grind.
Mm-hmm.
You have to research. It's mundane. It's a lot of calls and hangups and getting nowhere, but then you get somewhere and it's exciting. And if you don't love it, it'll completely drain you.
Yeah.
But if you love it, all that stuff is just fun. It's exciting. We were talking here the other day. We're kind of sharing like the extent that we've gone through to meet somebody. Like you've got a few of these too. Like we were farming and I'm trying to find this guy and I got an address on him
Mm-hmm.
and he lives inside the Anthem Country Club. My cousin lived in the Anthem Country Club. So I had the transponder to get in, but then he lived behind a second gate. So I jumped over the fence and I knocked on the guy's door and that's how I met him.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And it worked.
It worked. Yeah. I met the guy and we talked, and that one didn't go anywhere, but I had the relationship. Like if there was a deal to do, it ended up being that there wasn't a deal to do, but if there was, I got the relationship.
Yeah.
And that you'd say to somebody like, get out of your seat, go knock on the door, walk in. It's kind of scary to a lot of people.
Yeah. That guy, Cliff Chanel, he used to say, if you're at your desk, you're unemployed. People can take it different ways as they want, but like what he meant was you got to hustle. You got to be out there. It's people aren't just going to come in your office and be like, hey, I want to do a deal with you.
Exactly.
Have you ever been hung up on?
Oh, all the time.
I remember the first time. Yeah.
And you think like, why would someone, you're not rude when you're calling them. Why are they that rude to you? But yeah, no, it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never had the hard approach, a lot of it's my own failure sometimes. I mean, like
I would disagree on the failure part. I mean,
I'm saying someone else was making the push harder.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I took hey, I'm going to provide you.
Not my approach either.
Yeah.
I've never been a hard sell person. I'm here to, it's a marathon. You hear this all the time. Yeah. This industry, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. The one deal today might not be I got a call today from someone I met 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's three buildings that she wants to refer me. It's that kind of a business. I don't want to hire salespeople here. It's really someone who's high customer service that can learn the sales process. It's a consultative. It's you own a property at some point. If you want to sell it, I'd like to be the person that is. And in the meantime, let me just add value where I can. And if you never want to sell it, great. But if I can ever help you with anything, let me know.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever found yourself training your competition?
I can't say someone like left here and is in direct. I have a different view on specifically our market and the brokerage community.
Right.
In that we are more colleagues than we are competitors. So Ryan Martin, fantastic office broker, was here for 5 years. I'm an office broker. He's an office broker.
Right.
We were talking once, and he, just not in a negative way, just said, hey, we're competitors. And I looked at him and said, Ryan, when have you and I ever pitched the same deal? Like I'm presenting to get the listing and you're presenting to get the listing against each other.
Right.
We couldn't think of one hard example. There was one sort of like his client wrote an offer. My client was interested, but we never really competed.
Right.
And I don't think we're like other markets in that regard. One of the things I don't take for granted about our industry is that generally speaking, there aren't total jerks here.
Right.
We know there's the Chicago co-broker that tries to parachute in and tell us how we're going to do things on this deal, or the New York guy, or the San Francisco guy or gal, and we all just kind of laugh because it's just not how we operate here.
Right, 100%.
You're not going to come in here and poke Tom Thomas in the chest and say you're going to do this deal like this, or Mark Fine. It's just
you'll get run out pretty quick.
Quick, right? There's a few jerks that we all I've got my list, and it's less than one hand.
Yeah.
That if I can avoid dealing with them, I'll avoid it. It's kind of like you're saying, the bad person, even in a good deal.
Yeah.
If I can, and I'm talking about like agents. If I can avoid dealing with that person, I will avoid it.
Yeah.
But it isn't huge in our industry.
Yeah, I think I meant like competition might have been the wrong word. I've spent a lot of time with people who didn't come from any experience or were frustrated where they were not in real estate, or they were in real estate, but they were a assistant or a secretary, or they weren't doing the deals. And I've basically built, and I tell whoever comes over, I'll build something around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found I try to prevent it. I take a lot of pride. You mentioned Brittany being a long time. I take a lot of pride with people that have been 10 or 12 years. I mean, that you try to, it's sad when someone leaves.
It hurts.
It hurts.
Yeah.
And then some people, I have 2 people right now trying to come back, and I have brought people back before, but when I was talking about training, I meant more like I've built a couple of things around some people, and it's like in my head, I'm kind of like, where's the thank you or the like,
I think that comes, I have, and I wrestle with it too. There's you pour into somebody.
Yeah.
There's, someone that they're probably going to be successful no matter what,
Right.
but they met you. Just like you would be successful no matter what. But in this whole conversation, how much credit you gave to the people around you that in their own way poured into you.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that, and it could be just an employee-employer relationship, and for their own reasons, it's time for them to go. Or it could be an agent that was either new or just totally down in their season, and you embraced them and poured into them and showed them the way, and didn't just tell them here's what you need to do, but also gave them some things to work on, and it's crushing
Mm-hmm.
when it's their time to, or whatever, for their own reasons they decide they want to move on.
Yeah.
It's crushing.
Yeah. I've had one person just recently left. This is we own a residential company also, but which are going through a rebrand. I'm saying it first here. I was going through a rebrand, but they had an opportunity to go open a brand new franchise, and I'm happy for. It's like I'm not mad at them. Like the daughter did she decorated our house and did our remodel, and the family. I mean, I've traveled with the family, so it's like one of those bittersweet things. And I've had some other people leave that came back and got super upset that I didn't fight for them. And then I've had a couple of people leave where like I got mad at the other, unrelated to commercial real estate, but where it's kind of like, come on, man, in our industry, like if you know my main person is going, like why would you, in the, used to be, I don't know about now, but if like one of your apartment managers was leaving, the owner of that company a lot of times would call and be like, hey, you might want to try to work this out with this person. And it was, I'm not really dealing day to day with them, but then you would call. But yeah, that was something that, Jim Zeter, he trained a lot of people that went out to do a lot of stuff, but his system didn't keep people necessarily. You were kind of set up to leave in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
This is kind of a good segue into this next one. So I've noticed about you, and I've always admired about you, that you seem to genuinely want other people to succeed. I've even seen you go out of your way to either help them or connect them with someone, educate them on something. Where do you think that comes from?
That goes back to the mom thing, man, or my dad, just the family, like, but I think also how people treated me. I mean, like I've said Sam's name a ton of times. Earl Mulaski, I spent so much time with. Obviously, Mark Fine. If you look at those people, Steve Wynn, to this day, I mean, like, you look at those people and how they treated people. What a lot of people don't see these people behind the scenes, right? They don't know that they're just the nicest, kindest people, but the similarities in all of them are all the same of how they gave. We were at the groundbreak the other day for Mark Fine. So people still love this attention, let's just say, or the not attention, that's the wrong word, but like the recognition, right? So the Cello Towers is opening. It's this local guy, Patrick Brennan's a great guy. And his name, Mark's name got called out 3 times. Cedric Creer, the former councilman, the broker of record for the sales team said Mark Fine. And then obviously Patrick said Mark Fine. And Mark called me afterwards and was so happy that his name got called 3 times. And I hope one day that can be like me standing at that thing. And I think that's like this huge, no one's thanking the asshole, right? And so like, hey, thanks asshole for being a good, no one does that. And so like, if you can, continue to just be nice and supportive of people, I mean, it's, and you don't have to get something on everything. I mean, when without going into names, there was a gentleman that was going through a separation, let's just say, and it's the only house deal I've ever done. I didn't take the commission. The guy was richer than anything, and he treated it like it was like a $100 million office building. And he's like, tell them this much and not a penny more. And I'm like, listen, so-and-so. This is a publicly traded home builder. Like that you can't just, but I didn't take it. And so I don't say that just because, I mean, we're kind of asking the question,
Mhm.
but their whole family now, the guy's no longer with us. Their whole family now knows that I did that and knows how much that relationship meant to me. And so I think, if you come to the office, there's, 3 or 4 books on my desk that have, nice messages in the beginning. And those are my most prized possessions. I mean, it's like you and I could go out and do a deal anytime. And it's the knowing that you feel good about, um, you know, never having to look over your shoulder. You always, my conscience is so, if I feel like I did anything wrong, and I can tell, like, by the way, as you and I get to know each other, I mean, we've known each other forever, but if we work together on a day-to-day basis, I would know if something was on your mind today. And I tell the office, I'm like, I'll call them the next day. I had a situation yesterday where I met with her this morning. I said, hey, I could tell you were off yesterday. What happened? But I don't like any sort of conflict, which also helps by being nice to people. And sometimes you're going to piss people off, and like you're not trying to ever. But yeah, and it's a small town. I don't know which mentor said this, but someone said to me something in the nature of like, your relationship's all you got, and you only get one of them. Sorry, your reputation is all you got, and you only get one of them. And so I mean, that's true, right? Like if you are just known, I know a lot of people that I really like, but they, if you're going to try to do a deal with them, that it's going to be tough, or they're going to try to squeeze you on this or that. And so, like you said earlier, like sometimes I just will avoid those situations. So like, look at what you've done. I admire everything you've done. It's like, well, both of you guys. I mean, it's just like, you go back and tell stories about how, I mean, remember being at Sam's office and like, just kind of like, what was the guy? Oren? Oren. Yeah. What a guy. Like he's a guy I wish we could have worked with at that guy. Is he in Israel now? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he splits time here. Every now and again, he'll call me. He's in town.
I mean, what a stud. That was a fun time.
So he got married, moved to Israel, where she was from, had a kid, maybe more than one. I don't know exactly, but the kind of guy that would like, back then the technology was a magic jack. He got a magic jack for his phone back there. So he'd have a 702 number.
Oh yeah.
And he would wake up, it's opposite hours. So he'd wake up and do his cold calling on a magic jack.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Ending question. What's your favorite takeaway that you want to leave with the audience?
Just be nice to people and be humble. And there's always someone bigger and badder and better than you out there. And so just be nice to people, I think, and respectful to people. And, you never know what's on someone's mind, what they're going through in life. And so, I like that way, just to, be respectful of people and, their time. And yeah, I'm respectful of your time. This is amazing. I appreciate you asking me to be here today.
I appreciate you for doing it.
What a fun memory lane.
Thank you for listening. I would love to hear from you about your takeaways from this episode. Make sure to leave us a comment or leave us a review. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can hear future episodes as they come out. My name is Hayim Mizrahi. Tune in next time.